right, and we're live. Welcome to the 101st episode, very special episode of the Korea podcast. I'm your host, Jack, located in Ulsan, South Korea. And today on the Live in Korea podcast, I've got a very special guest. Dave Sperling is with us here. He finally agreed to do it, the interview. I've been tracking Dave, well, not tracking. I messaged Dave a year ago, I believe. Somehow, I don't know, I don't even know how your profile popped out on Facebook. Okay, first of all, welcome, David.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks for agreeing to do this here. I tend to start the podcast and just ramble on.
No, that's okay.
So I think last year, your profile popped up on Facebook somehow.
Right.
On my feed. I don't know why. And I thought to myself, hey, that's interesting because David is. So is David or David? Is that okay?
Either one, whatever you want to call me, it's fine.
Fantastic. I thought, wow, David, very well-known guy in the ESL sphere, and I figured, what the heck, I'm going to shoot him a message and see if he's interested in doing a podcast. And I think that was at my 50th podcast mark, and I didn't hear back from you. And clearly understood. I'm like, yeah, the guy is busy. He's got his thing. I'm sure he's got interviews lined up left and right. Nothing of that sort.
Who are you talking about, Jack?
And so the other day, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, there must have been talk about Dave's ESL or something else happened, and I was flipping through my chats. And I saw our previous chat, and I thought, hey, I'm going to message him, David, again and see what he has to say. And I did send you a message, and literally within 1 or 2 days, you responded, sure, why not? I was like, wow, yeah. All right, cool.
Well, Jack, I the last message I never got because I hardly ever use Messenger for somebody who has an online, presence.
Right.
I tend to try to spend most of my free time offline. And it was only recently that I've started using Messenger again and looking through all these long lost messages from a year ago that I just never checked. But so I apologize. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Maybe this is better timing anyway, because the 40th episode or 50th episode, whatever it was, was still fresh. I was inexperienced. Now I'm a pro. So everything's running
there
smooth.
You go. Yeah, it was strategic.
Yes, very much so. So I put out a message a little bit early because I thought, I personally think it's very interesting. This interview, talking to you, will be it was of interest to me because I know I found several jobs through your website, and I'm sure that there were thousands of other people who did the same. So the project, the website that you created in 1995, right? Is that correct?
That was the beginning. Yep.
Yeah. It has helped thousands of people across the globe finding jobs and finding information on the places to which we were, to travel and stuff. So I put up a message on the social networks asking people to post questions they may have for Dave Sperling. And there was a lot of people who said, I'd be very interested to hear, to see the interview. And there were some questions. So we'll start the interview with me kind of asking you the regular stuff that I usually ask people, where did you come from? Yeah. How did you start in a space? And then we'll jump into the questions. And we're probably going to cover a lot of the questions in our initial talk because, people are usually interested in the same thing. Like how did Dave get started with what he started? 1995. So I read your bio just briefly, and from what I understand, you finished your MA in linguistics. What brought you to the point at which you said, "Hey, I'm gonna start a website"?
Well, it goes back more in time. I went to Japan to work and to teach in 1985, and so that was the beginning. Before that, I had no experience or training in ESL, and so that was the seed. So I spent maybe a total of about well, like, I keep increasing the amount of years as I've gotten older.
Mm.
The amount of years that I've spent teaching in Asia keeps growing
Right.
more and more, but I think I spent I tell people 5 or 6 years, but I think it was about 4.5 years in
Hmm.
Tokyo.
Hmm.
And then I spent about 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, whatever, whatever I'm in the mood to tell people,
Right.
working in Thailand. So, I had, when I came back to the US, and I began my master's program in linguistics, applied linguistics, I had already many years of teaching experience. And
Hmm.
so that was kind of the beginning. Uh, at least from my interest in ESL and teaching and all of that stuff and languages.
Right.
Um, well, in 1993, 1994, I bought my first computer, my first Mac,
Mm.
and it was kind of like in some ways really the really early days of the internet.
Right.
It was just beginning. You had AOL, America Online.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was it. The computer came with AOL, and
Yeah.
so you had that interface to navigate. And then more and more, I started learning other things like how to, uh, to be able to telnet, like using a terminal and being able to telnet into various libraries, even for me as a grad student to be able to do research. It's really primitive now the way I was doing it.
Mm.
But then it was just incredible, that I could get access to journal articles and magazine articles
Hmm.
with just a bit of typing. So from 93 to 95, while I was doing my master's, I just became more and more excited about the internet and its potential. And so in 95, I ran into one of my old professors. In my grad program,
Hmm.
and he asked me if I created an HTML page, a web page, and I said no. He goes, "Well, you should do it. It's a lot of fun." So I went to, I went to I went to a bookstore. Yeah, in case your audience doesn't know what a bookstore is, because they don't exist much
Everything's
anymore.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
everything's
hard to
online.
find.
It's Amazon
It
now.
is, yeah. It's hard to find a bookstore.
Yeah, right.
But I wandered into a Borders or a Barnes and Noble bookstore, and I bought a book on HTML,
All right.
and I started learning,
Yeah,
just the
yeah,
basic code. I wouldn't call it coding,
right.
but it was pretty easy,
Mm.
and I started to teach myself, how to create a basic web page, and that was the beginning. I In 95, I had a class, a
Mm.
writing class, and um, was it 96? Let's see, 93, 95. Yeah, 95. So in 1995, I had an advanced writing class, and I guess it was 96. Take that back. So it was in January, February of 1996, and that was the beginning. I was teaching my students how to self-publish on the internet. And
Hmm.
together as a class, we published, with graphics and photos. And I published their writing, their little biographies on each other. I would have
Hmm.
the students interview each other and then take pictures and then um,
You
write
publish
up
those
little biographies.
on the
I
website that you're
did.
working?
I published it
Hmm.
on the Cal State University Northridge
Okay.
website.
Right.
I guess you could probably find it on the what do they call it? The Wayback. Forgot what they call it. There's a way you can archive. Maybe it's the Internet Archive or
Okay.
something like that you can actually access. But that was the seed. That was the beginning, and I had so much fun with it. And you know, my students were receiving email messages from students all over the world, and they were excited. And I found that it was a very powerful tool to motivate my students to write and to be able to self-publish, which at that time was just revolutionary,
Right.
I thought, and uh, and then to turn that also into kind of an interactive thing where students were then getting key pals and you know beginning a correspondence with other ESL students and other people from different parts of the world. So it was, just the real beginning of,
Right.
it's kind of like, it was, what was 95, 96. It was just really the very early days. And that motivated me I can't say, oh, I created Dave's ESL Cafe. I was just playing around creating different pages, different
Sure.
themes. And,
But I think
and
like some of the
yeah,
younger audiences, like um, right now, it struck me as well now when you said that you went out to buy an HTML book in order to learn some coding. Because I mean, these days, who uses HTML? We just go to like Wix or something, and it just drag and drop, and you've got a website within 10 minutes, essentially, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it was
yeah,
a very different
pretty
approach back
much.
then to creating
It's
websites.
very different. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so completely different. You didn't
Yeah.
have things like Facebook or social
No.
media. Well, not really. Yeah, not in the same. I mean, you
Not
had
in
the
the same way they are
beginnings
now,
of.
right?
No, you
Yeah.
had these. I think they called Usenet. But it's so many years that I could hardly
Hmm.
even remember what the name. You had different themed groups, but it was all. Again, you had to be somewhat geeky.
Hmm. To get
It
into
was
that.
because it really did start out of, it was a really academic thing, I
Right.
think in the beginning where, a lot of people were just using this to, it was just such a different form of internet
Hmm.
compared to, what it is now. But that was the beginning. And I created so many different pages that I needed to create like one menu, one kind of like main page.
Hmm.
I guess you could call it like an index, because I don't think I had at that time even a concept on what a website was. I knew what a
Hmm.
web page was.
Right.
Create a web page, but I didn't have any concept of what your website. I don't think it was something like that was even part of our vocabulary, or at least
Hmm.
my vocabulary.
Right.
But I had created several pages and I needed some way to tie all this together. Therefore, da 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 da, Dave's ESL Cafe.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well for you, right?
Worked out okay. I
Yeah.
just thought, yeah, cafe. Yeah, well, I needed a menu. So
Hmm.
where where do you get menus at a cafe? And cafes to me were always very social,
Yeah.
um, a social thing. So, so to me that it kind of just clicked, and that was kind of the beginning, and I just had a lot of fun with it.
Nice. So, you said you spent a few years teaching in Japan. So Japan was your first kind of ESL gig, right?
I was just shy of my 24th birthday. I was
Hmm.
23, just about to turn 24, which I thought I was all grown up. Now I'm on the verge of turning 60
Yeah.
in a few months. So, it's just, I have some very, very fond nostalgic memories of those wonderful early days. It was just a great time to be young and living in Tokyo, this very dynamic, exciting,
Hmm.
vibrant city in the 1980s as
Right.
well, which was just, aside from Japan kind of being at that time kind of like the center of the universe, it was just
Hmm.
so hot, both in terms of like style and fashion,
Right.
um, as well as the business and the economy and all of that stuff. So it was, and not to mention all that great '80s music. So, which I didn't appreciate then. I appreciate the '80s music now. I was a '70s, a 1960s and 1970s
Right.
music fan, and I kind of put my nose up at some of these synth rock bands. And
Hmm.
now that's all that I listen to, So, but anyways, it was just a great time to be in Japan, and I did it the old-fashioned way. Of course, we didn't have internet then, and the way we found jobs, which perhaps they're still doing it now. I don't know
Hmm.
because I haven't. I've been to Japan, but I haven't looked for a job there in many many years. But the way we used to do it was the old-fashioned way. And we would get the Monday's edition of the Japan Times,
Hmm.
and that was when all the school teaching listings were. Uh, it was Monday,
Yeah.
so you went to the classifieds in the back, and they had all these teaching jobs, and it was very exciting. You go,
It's
get
interesting.
to go to the newsstand in the morning and pick up a paper, and circle ones that you felt were good or you were qualified for or that
Right.
sounded okay. And then I didn't have a telephone, so I'd have to
Trick over.
trek over to a phone booth, which, in the freezing, it was like freezing. Yeah, I'm a California boy,
Yeah, yeah.
so here I am in Tokyo in February, and then, you I don't, you punch in the numbers and set up interviews, and in the beginning there was a lot of rejection.
Mm,
I had a degree, but I didn't have experience. But in those days, it didn't matter.
right.
You did need a college degree, but you didn't need experience then. And so, I don't know, within a couple of weeks, I landed my, first job,
Mm.
and I just winged it.
I think
I
most
didn't
of
know
us did on
what
the
I was doing. I mean, yeah,
first time teaching you stuff.
especially, especially now. I mean, I learned a lot on the way. And then when I
Mm,
went to grad school and I studied linguistics and really, really had to, and then also being in just really fantastic ESL programs that I've
mm,
taught in, both, especially Thailand and at Cal State University Northridge, the intensive English program. I learned so much.
mm.
But then, I mean, I stood up in front of a classroom and I said, okay, this is a noun, this is a pronoun. And my students were like, what is this guy doing? Um, but a lot of what I was teaching then is what they called English conversation,
Hmm.
which meant that I just had to talk. I
Right.
had to, just generate conversation among the students. It was very little teaching
Yeah.
and formal teaching, and just lots of talking, um, and that was the beginning. And I loved it. I mean, I was always a traveler, and prior to that, I had backpacked all over the world on, it seems like, just about most of the continents and so many countries, and always had been interested in languages and
Right.
different cultures and food. And so I just loved it. I remember being there like 2 or 3 or 4 months in the beginning and just pinching myself, like, is this real? I
Mm.
really,
It's a
it
honeymoon
was
period.
just, it was a great, yeah. Of
Yeah.
course, the honeymoon crashed somewhat, like it does everywhere,
Yeah.
especially in your 20s, where it's like, God, I remember one time, Tokyo's so boring.
Really?
I think, God, yeah, I wish I was in LA. If I was in LA, then you
Yeah.
move back here to Los Angeles. God, when I was in Tokyo, you know what I used to do? There's so much to do.
That's
But
interesting.
no, it was, yeah,
I
always, the
spent a
grass
year
is
in
always
Tokyo. Like
greener.
I'm wondering, but I was 2004 to 2005, and
Uh-huh.
obviously it was a very different city already, right? By then. Um,
Yeah, different but the same. Tokyo is a weird place. It's one of those places that, yeah, in some ways it hasn't changed at all,
mm,
and in some ways it's changed, but not as much as like some other places I've lived in. Like I lived in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, and it's like night and day. It's hard to even comprehend the how different it was, the dramatic difference. It's like it's not even the same city. I mean, most of it, as it was when I lived there
when did you live in
back in the
Thailand?
late
Like the
1980s.
bulk of the
I
time you
lived,
spent?
I went there in 1988, and I
Right.
moved back to Los Angeles in 1982. I'm
Hmm.
sorry,
You went
19. Can't
backwards
go
in
back in
time.
time, can I? That'd be cool, wouldn't
That would be cool.
it? Yeah,
Not only Dave's
like,
Cafe, he also invented time travel.
that's right. I'm Benjamin Button. Have you ever seen that movie? And by the
Right.
time this podcast is over, I'm going to be like 6 years old. No, I got there in 1988,
Hmm.
and I left in 1992 when my son was a year old, and then
So you left
decided
Thailand in
to move back.
1992. Yeah,
I left Thailand in
nice.
'92. Yeah, so I had had some really great years there. I got married
Mm.
in '89 to a woman from northern Thailand, and
Hmm.
then our son was born in '91,
Mm.
and had loved Thailand.
Yeah, we
But
love
it was
Thailand.
time.
My wife and I go
Great
there whenever we
place.
get to. It's gorgeous. We love Thailand.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back later this year or next year.
Mm.
But I had a 1-year-old son,
Hmm.
and it was hard to make ends meet in Thailand,
Mm.
teaching English, and and I wanted to kind of, I don't know. I was like 30. I think when I moved back to LA, I was 31, I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to move on, do something different. I didn't want my life to be stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of the reason, was just to spend some time back in the U.S., continue my education. And then the idea, too, was after that to go back overseas. I always thought I was going to be a lifelong expat.
Right.
I never thought that I'd be raising my two children a stone's throw away from where I grew up,
Right.
in the San Fernando Valley of LA. Because, when I was, a teenager, I just couldn't wait to get out of here.
Mm.
So,
So when is the last? So in 1992, and back to the States, was that basically the time during at which you stopped teaching ESL and kind of moved on?
no, that was just, in some ways, it was just, well, it wasn't just the beginning, but no, I needed work. Well, let me backtrack. I actually moved back to the US to start a doctoral program in clinical psychology in San
Mm-hmm.
Diego. So I was accepted into a program.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually moved to San Diego, and I started the program in, I guess, the fall, September of 1992.
Mm.
And it just did not work out. I had an apartment, nice apartment, and I needed to pay for it. And so I got a job teaching ESL. So I was teaching, most of them were refugees from, not all of them, but a lot of them were refugees from like the former Soviet
Right.
republics. A lot of Armenians, where they were coming from places where there was ethnic cleansing, and a lot of Armenians were killed. And I was working with kind of like, especially Russian-speaking Armenians.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that in San Diego, as well as going through a full-time doctoral program. And I couldn't keep up. It was a full-time program, and the demand, it was very difficult to work my way through it, and being a husband and being a new dad.
Right.
So I had to make the decision very quickly to drop out of the program, because I had borrowed the money. I got a student loan, and I needed to pay. You had a certain ad drop time period, and it was either make a decision or lose a lot of money,
Right.
And I decided that, this very quickly, this is not going to work. I was too behind. So I dropped out, which was very painful.
It is. I've
Really,
experienced some of those myself. It's never a pleasant feeling.
Because it just wasn't me. I just wasn't the dropout kind of person. But
Right.
But anyways, I continued teaching. So I had students. Again, I still needed to make money, so I quit my job, but kept teaching through the fall semester of '92. And then in December, my dad had a house, and my dad was moving out, kind of back to my mom's house. They were separated, and they bought a house together, a big house. And then, my mom said, this house is so big, you can move back in, because I'm never going to see you.
Right.
So my dad was like upstairs, my mom was downstairs. And, they lived together and never ran into each other. It was the perfect marriage.
That sounds good.
So my dad said, hey, why don't you, I've got a house. Why don't you move into my house? Because it would, my dad owned the house, and it was already paid for. And I said, yeah, are you sure? He goes, yeah, I'm not going to rent it out, and you could have it rent free. So I said, yeah, okay. Nice. So I moved to LA around December of '92. And then I started, again, got another job teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought to myself, there's a university just up the street called Cal State University, Northridge, CSUN. So I drove on over there. I think I drove. I don't know what I did. I must have driven over there, but somehow I found out.
It's been a while.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like, how did I find out I didn't have a cell phone? So, but somehow I found out that they had a graduate program in applied linguistics. So I don't know how I found that out. But I called the coordinator, and she invited me over on campus, and I met with her. And, I gave her a copy of my transcripts, and she had a look over, and she said, okay, you're in. I go, what do you mean I'm in? She goes, yeah, here, this is what you do. Go over here, fill this out, go into this office. The next thing, I was like, she just said you're in, and yeah, I just had to go through the formality
All
of
right. Well, it's easy
applying.
enough.
But that was, yeah, I mean, she just said, yeah, you're a shoo-in. I go, don't I have to take a graduate record exam?
Mm.
No, that's okay. We need people into this linguistics program.
Mm.
Great. And so that was the beginning. I thought, okay, I love ESL.
Mhm.
um, Psychology is not going to work. Now, they say hindsight is 2020. I would have made a terrible psychologist. Maybe if I had, some invisible AirPods and I could, tune into some music, well,
Right.
people are talking about their problem. No, I just, yeah, I know now that, no, I don't, who knows, but it really wasn't something that was particularly meant for me.
Right.
So, ESL was kind of a perfect thing to go into. And the master's degree was really the key that opened a lot of doors
Mm.
in terms of moving forward into the world of ESL. And so, yeah, that's, I don't know, what was your question?
When was the last time you you worked in ESL? Because I guess at one
Yeah, there
point,
you go. Yeah.
you finished your degree 95, 96. You started kind of working on the early stages of your website. And
Right. That's
so I
right.
guess maybe what I was leading into was when was the time at which you realized that hey, this could be a potential money pig, or I could make a living doing this, and I don't have to teach, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much that I wanted to get out of teaching,
Mm.
because I love teaching. I always
Hmm.
felt, for the most part, that it didn't even feel like a job. I've been very blessed with just fantastic jobs throughout my teaching career. Um, but the website, it all started really. I created Dave's ESL Cafe I started working on January, February of 1996. And then I got an invitation to participate at the Chicago TESOL
Hmm.
conference. It's like the internet. It was the International TESOL conference
Mm.
that was held in Chicago, I believe, in like March of 1996. And there was a professor named, I think his name was, he passed away, Roy Bowers, and he was kind of a pioneer in educational technology.
Hmm.
And he was doing a workshop, and he invited kind of a group of us that were involved with like online work to be part of his workshop.
Right.
So my university paid for my trip to Chicago. It was great. I went to my director and I said, "This is um, what I've got going," and she said, "Yeah, we'll pay for it." I said, "Great." So I went to Chicago, and it was the beginning. I just met a whole lot of people. A lot of people then had heard of Dave's ESL Cafe, even
Mm.
though it was only like 3 months old or so, 3 or 4 months old. So it got me enthusiastic. Um, and then later in the year, I don't know if I was invited. I've been invited to a lot of conferences in the past, not anymore. Nobody loves me anymore. I'm not now. I'm not an academic anymore. But in those days, I guess I was an academic, and so,
Hmm.
um, so I was invited, or especially in the beginning, just uh, filled out the forms to speak, to present
Hmm. Hmm.
at various conferences. And I was up in San Francisco for the California TESOL conference. And
Right.
during one of my presentations, a publisher from Prentice Hall Regents approached me after my talk, and she asked me if I was interested in writing a book.
Hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, that'd be cool." Why not me? Me? My head swelled. My
Well,
head got.
sure, of course.
Yeah, there
It's,
you go.
I think
Ooh.
everybody would have responded the same way. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah. And so so she was great.
Mm.
And so we brainstormed, and I came up with something called the Internet Guide for English Language Teachers, and so that was the first book that I wrote. And then the second book I wrote for them was it was really kind of an expanded version of that, and that was called, I think it was called, what was it called? Do I have it on my bookcase? No,
So
I
many
doubt
books
it.
back there.
Oh yeah, no, these are nothing. I'm an avid reader. I'm a
Nice.
bookworm, so I go through a couple books a week. But now these days it's more Kindle.
Right.
Um, Not because of like being anti paper. It's just more that I've gotten old and my eyes I can make the font big and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
right.
So anyways, it was called something like a Dave Sperling's Internet Guide or something like
Mm,
that. And then the third book I wrote, which was about a year later, was a workbook for students and teachers to
okay.
be able to do internet activities with various themes. And that was just great. I mean, I really thought it was a fantastic book. It's probably pretty, well, obviously it's dated now. And most textbooks have probably integrated that into the textbooks, and and there's a lot of that certainly integrated into the curriculum, especially recently with COVID and so much Zoom online teaching. But proud to say, I think it was fairly revolutionary at the time and a load of fun to create. And so that was that. And from that, I had a lot of invitations to do a lot of presentations, both from different universities, and then through my publisher, I had to do. It was kind of like working. Well, I wouldn't call it vacations, but kind of like working. What would I call it? Not a vacation. Working trips that were
Hmm.
also fun, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Be the best way to call it.
Business
So
trips,
I go
I
over
thought
there
you
and
were calling it, right?
their business, I guess. It wasn't exactly, I wasn't paid for it, but
Hmm.
they would say, can you come to Hong Kong and do some workshops? And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, sure. So I was going all over the place,
Mm,
doing presentations, and it was a blast. But meanwhile, getting back on track with Dave's ESL Cafe, it was getting more and more expensive to run,
right.
both in terms of my time, because a lot of what's paid for now, what schools or recruiters pay for, I was giving away for free, and
Hmm.
it was a lot of manual work, a lot of work with job ads and editing and all the other stuff I was doing. There's pages that
Right.
were there that don't exist anymore that consumed a lot of work for me. And then my internet service provider, or I guess now you call it a web hosting company.
Hmm.
Now bandwidth is so much less of a problem. A lot of, I can, now I'm on a server which has unlimited bandwidth. I never have to worry about bandwidth.
Right.
But back then in the 90s, you had to pay for it and you had to pay a lot. So suddenly I was getting internet bills that were like $1,500-$1,600 a month. I could have been more than that. I don't remember because so
Yeah,
many
I could
years
say.
ago.
I think I just heard
But
somebody recently say that internet was ridiculously expensive back then.
it
Yeah.
was it was crazy. I was getting all these like excess bandwidth
Hmm.
charges, and I wasn't making very much. I was an adjunct instructor at
Right.
Cal State University Northridge, which meant that it was kind of a full-time, part-time position,
Mm.
meaning I was working full-time, but without the benefits.
Right.
Well, full-time was probably like, I don't know, 4 hours a week, I guess it was, but that was
Mm.
considered full-time. Um, and so I wasn't making very much, and I was also encouraged by my university or by my director for all of us to go on unemployment during the
Mm.
breaks, which was actually great
Mm.
because I'd get a paycheck
Sure.
during Christmas vacation, the
Right.
winter holidays, and are you looking for work? Yep, sure. And then 6 weeks later, I'd be back at work again, and
Mm.
but anyways, I did not make very much money. Maybe I probably made around $3,000 a month, probably
Mm.
less than that.
And half of that
But
went
that's
into the
probably it.
bandwidth
Yeah,
payments.
right. Half of it was going into that. And well, by 97, see, my daughter was born in 97. So yeah, 97, I had two kids. And I was going broke, I was
Mm.
just bleeding my savings account. And, it was so anyways, I knew I was going to have to come up with some ideas to try to
Mm.
bring some kind of revenue to the site. So in 98, I started selling banner advertising,
Mm.
and that helped. Yeah, with that, I was able to really to cover the internet costs. It was enough money for me to cover my excess bandwidth.
Mm.
And then I started thinking that it wasn't fair that I was giving away free job ads
Mhm.
because Well, number one, it was a lot of work on my end, and the
Right.
schools and the recruiters were very demanding. Like, when is my
Everybody wants
job ad going
stuff
to
for
be?
free,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Exactly.
right. Why didn't you get my ad online? It's been 40 hours, and
Uh,
I'm like, yeah, I'm flying to Thailand.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Not to mention how difficult it was, because I'd take trips to Thailand once a
Sure.
year, and back in those days there was almost no internet,
Right.
so trying to run the website from there, which I did manage to do, through
Mm,
dial-up and all that
mm.
stuff. But so
That would have been
but
fun.
anyways, so around 99, end of 98, I
Mm,
was looking at the site objectively,
mhm,
and I thought, I had managed a school in Tokyo,
mm,
and I never thought twice about spending money to place an ad to get quality English teachers. It was just part of running the school that I was
mm.
paid to manage. Um, so I thought, yeah, I don't like this plan. This business plan is not working. But mind you, I had no business plan. I was just trying to squeak out a living,
Right.
just trying to, run things. So the first thing I did was, just for fun of it, I applied, okay, how do I do this? It's not as easy as it is now. So I had to get a merchant account through my bank, Wells Fargo. I think that's how it was. And then I had to be able to learn how to be able to process credit cards, which I was able to do through I don't know. I think I had a company called AuthorizeNet, but I can't remember now
Mm,
exactly. But anyways, I taught myself, created a secure form, um, and then I think I paid a programmer to help me convert it over. But I did not convert it over. I was really, really scared to
mm.
do that, because I thought it would be the end of my website. I thought that there'd be no job ads.
Right.
People wouldn't pay. But I knew it was a make or break kind of situation, because I didn't think I could continue on, like the way I was running the website.
Right.
So now I will preface this to say that I don't drink anymore. I stopped as of December. Not drinking coffee. Um, but in '99, it was one of my friends came over,
Mhm.
and he brought a bottle of something good, bottle of whiskey or something, and we were drinking together, and I was showing him. He was a friend that was encouraging me, like, Dave, you can't keep doing this. You're spending
Mm.
all these hours. And so I said, no, no, I have things set up. I said, maybe in the year 2000, that's kind of a good pivotal year. I go,
Yeah.
give it another year. I go, I have everything set up, but in
Mhm.
the year 2000, I'll switch it over on January 1st.
Mm.
He goes, well, let me see how it works. So, okay, I said, all I got to do is just click, I just had it to whatever it was, FTP into the
Yeah.
site, change a setting, and boom, I said, this is it. And then I took him over to the web page, and I see, now it's converted over.
Mhm.
And he goes, oh, that's cool. Anyways, after a few more drinks, I walked him to his car to say goodbye. He was my best friend,
Yeah.
gave him a hug, walked back into the house, brushed my teeth, and went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I had like $400 in orders, or
Oh,
something
really?
like that. I was like,
Nice.
oh God, I forgot to turn that off. Oh no. Um,
That's interesting.
oh no. And I was like, oh, because it really was not intentional. I mean,
Right,
it was
right.
not. And that's where, you could, luckily I was drinking then, and
Mm.
I was able
Well, that
to,
worked out for you.
yeah, if I was sober, it wouldn't have worked out. So for people out there, there are benefits to drinking alcohol. Um,
You.
but
uh,
anyways, that was kind of the beginning, and there was a lot of hate mail, a lot of opposition in the beginning. I had to really
to you
have,
charging fees for the advertisements.
because
Right.
it was 1999, and
Mm.
now, it's nobody really thinks
Right.
much
Twice
about
about it.
it.
Right.
But back in '99, it was new.
Right.
There was still, I
Yeah.
think, the commercial aspect maybe was just kind of getting off the ground.
Mm.
But I'm glad I did it. And by the end of '99, I knew that I was making. Well, number one, I was making a lot more money doing the website than
Mm.
teaching. And I also needed to. I just needed a bit of a break. So I went to my director and I said, I'd like to take a kind of a leave of absence. I need
Yeah.
to the website's up and running, and I didn't think it would be a permanent thing. I thought that you know, I just if I had enough money to stop teaching for a while, kind of like what do you call it, like a sabbatical or something like that. I was able to just focus on the website, and that's what I did. And I just never went back to teaching again.
Mm.
The website, not only was it better for me financially, um, and not only was I able to have more time to be able to work on the website,
Mm.
but more than that, my kids in '99, my son was 8, 7, almost 8, and my daughter was 2. So I could be a stay-at-home dad,
Right.
which was fantastic. So I think one of the biggest benefits for me was just being able to have time with my family.
Mm.
That was one of the first. Nobody now. I think you call them. You can. There's one term that I love, and I learned this. I also spend time. I have a small apartment in San Francisco, and I go up there a lot. And it's a very tech-oriented city. And
Mm.
there, the first time I heard the term digital nomad.
Right. Yeah. That's an.
And
Mm.
that's yeah, I'd heard it. I had met some people that ran a cookie shop,
Hmm.
and they said, we're going to be selling this shop. I go, oh, really? Yeah. She goes, my husband, he works for a tech company, and we're just going to be digital nomads. We started an online business. This was maybe 2, 3 years ago.
Right.
And they go, yeah, we're just selling everything here, and they were actually heading to northern Thailand, but they
Hmm.
said, they were going to live in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, even though I've been based in LA, raising my kids, I had traveled so much. I really was kind of a digital nomad in
Mm.
that sense. Maybe one of the first. It was something that was hard to explain to people. Um, what I did, what I was doing, how I was doing it. My father, who would have been 100 years old this year. He passed
Wow.
away at 93, but he
Mm.
was blown away. My dad was like, oh, I think this just, my dad is from such an old, different generation, but
Sure.
he could grasp enough of it to know that the, the freedom that I had, the ability to take off for a couple of months to Thailand,
Mm.
or later on rent an Airbnb somewhere in Japan or
Hmm.
Amsterdam or something like that. My dad knew that it was priceless. It
Yeah.
wasn't so much
Sure.
the amount of money that I was making,
But just the
but
ability to
more,
use the money in a way like that.
well, the ability to transform the freedom. Not like my dad had started.
Right.
My dad didn't come from the U.S. He was an immigrant, and came to the U.S. with very little money, and
Mm.
just had to work like a dog. And my dad became a businessman, and had a nursery, a beautiful, one of the most beautiful plant nurseries, in
Hmm.
L.A. And But for my dad, still, even though my dad loved having his own business,
Hmm.
that independence. But my dad said the difference was that my dad didn't have the freedom to just be able to. It was hard for him. Like if my dad wanted to go somewhere, there was a
Mm.
lot of coordinating to do. And
Right.
even when he went to that place, he had to make calls. How's everything going? Or sometimes they would call him and check up on things. And it was a little bit stressful for him.
Mm.
And his admiration was the fact that I could work anywhere. I could be in an internet cafe in Laos, or Cambodia,
Right.
and work and do my work. I could be, you know, just in the middle of nowhere. You
Yeah,
know,
I think
um,
there's a lot of like from my experience, a lot of the dads that live here in South Korea have share similar sentiments. A lot of us want to spend more time with our kids and just be able to do these things. And I know for a fact that there are a few of these guys that are doing exactly that. I came across an advertisement somewhere on the internet. I don't remember. There's a
mhm.
couple of countries, and they're just kind of obscure, smaller countries like Estonia or something like that that
Mhm.
provide working visas for digital nomads. There are
Oh
conditions
wow,
like you need to
wow.
have an income of $50,000 a year, I think, and
Right.
then the country will
Wow.
issue you a working visa for a duration of 2 years, basically. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, there's
Well,
I remember Estonia, Um,
Okay.
I think I don't know, but there were smaller countries. Some were based like in the Mediterranean or closer to Eastern Europe. Um,
Well, that's
yeah,
great. Well, you know what? I'm going to get off this podcast now and head to Estonia
it's it's worth exploring.
because,
Like that's
well,
something
it
I
would
would
be
definitely be interested
actually.
in doing.
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Because somebody had asked me, they said, "Where would
Mm,
you like to live?" And I said, "Well, I love Amsterdam." And I had
mm,
spent a lot of time there. And I said, "Yeah, I said, Amsterdam would be great, but it's very difficult to get a visa. I mean, I
right,
could spend 6 months of the year there, but if I wanted to
right,
spend
right.
a long time, I don't have EU,
Yeah,
citizenship.
yeah.
So that's pretty fantastic. But yeah, but I have my base here,
A
and
base is important. It's important to have a place that you can, always go back to in case things go
yeah, I
sideways.
guess so. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess so.
Kind of a security
Although,
blanket, I think.
yeah, but it's also tempting to just be a little freer,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I
without
mean,
all of that. Yeah, so to kind of move away from,
I think psychologically
sometimes.
it gives you kind of this security, like I think a lot of people
Yeah.
are afraid. I know personally there is a lot of fear in the idea of moving to a new place without leaving anything behind. When you know that you have a place that you can always come back to, I think the
Right.
moving part becomes a lot easier, because okay, well, we can go there, and if it doesn't work out, we'll just come back, But if you don't
Yeah.
have that,
Yeah.
we'll just come back. Then the moving part all of a sudden becomes, we're going to change our lifestyle. Like everything will have to change. We'll
Mm-hmm.
have to move our life, and that's the difficult part.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I agree, Jack. It's something so much easier to do when you're younger.
yeah, that too.
When I moved back to LA, well, it's different when you're young because when came back to LA,
Mm,
I had what I had back here was I had parents that were alive. I had parents, I
mm,
had siblings, I had friends. Um, and so it's very different now in the sense that, both my parents are gone. I've lost three of my siblings.
mm,
I've even got had friends that have passed away. It is really quite different as you get older. It also, as you get older, you tend to have more what I call baggage.
mm.
Not necessarily bad baggage. Sometimes people say, baggage, they think of terrible things. Well, my baggage tends to be really good baggage. I have three dogs and three cats. They're wonderful. And if you think, like we would never, they're our kids, our children, we would never leave them.
Right.
And so, it gets to be more complicated, I think,
Mm,
for a lot of people as you get older and you get more responsibility and a mortgage and pets and parents too that are that age and you've got to take care of. And so, so it's definitely, I encourage younger people and anybody, look, you could be 70 years old. And if you want to teach, fantastic. I mean, I encourage everybody. But especially I encourage when I meet people that really have not seen much of the world, and if I'm in Jamba Juice and
mm,
somehow I strike up a conversation with the person behind the counter, the cash register, and talk about travel.
mm.
I encourage them. I tell them that yeah, go for it. You want to go to Thailand? Oh, I don't have any money. Well, go over there, teach for a year. You can get a job.
Right.
Wouldn't be difficult. Um, and especially at that time, I think it's a fantastic, it's a very impressionable, formidable time in your life as you're in your
Mm,
teens and your 20s. Um, it tends to develop a more open-mindedness about people and cultures, and curiosity.
mm.
And so, yeah, I think if more people, traveled and seen more of the world, we'd, you know,
We'd all
we
be
live in a
better off, maybe.
better planet.
You mentioned Kotiso, and I kind of wanted to jump
Hmm.
into that and then maybe try to move over to onto the questions. But I
Sure.
I was just browsing through the internet, kind of looking because I just finished the class literally at 11 o'clock, and I was telling my student, she's an adult student, and I was telling her about the great thing I'm going to do in about 30 minutes, meeting this guy called Dave Sperling. She's Korean, she doesn't. She's a bit younger, and so she doesn't
Hmm.
know Dave's ESL because that's not part of her life.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Sure.
she was impressed. I was like, he's kind of important or kind of famous. So she said, yay.
Pseudo famous.
Yeah. So I was flipping through Google and I found in search of interviews with you, and there are a few. And one of them is with Cotiso that took place in 2003.
Ah,
Yeah,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't
I
remember.
didn't look at it yet, but I will definitely. I didn't have
Okay.
time.
Well, my hair is going to be darker. There's
Yeah,
no
well,
white
you're a
on the
lot younger.
beard.
This is 2003, but it was
That's a
posted in
long time ago. Wow.
2011 for some
Huh.
strange reason. Yeah.
I don't know. They sat on it.
So some of the questions
Got
that were
lost the basement tapes. That's right. Like Bob Dylan, Yeah, we just found the bootleg of Dave's interview at
right,
Catiso.
right. So some of the questions that I received was one of them was, did you? So you worked in Japan, you worked in Thailand. Have you ever worked in Korea?
No, I have how many times? I've taken 3 trips to Korea, and all of them were for conferences, for
Mm,
presentations
okay.
or workshops. No, no. Korea was definitely not on the radar when I was teaching. 1985 is when I went to Japan,
Mm,
and I don't know what the teaching scene was at that time, but certainly it wasn't on anyone's radar. It was all for Asia. It was mostly Japan.
mm-hmm.
It's hard to believe, but like China didn't, in that way, in the teaching scene, didn't even exist,
Right.
which is one of the biggest markets now. And Taiwan, there was a bit in Taiwan for teaching,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all Japan.
Yeah.
So but I had met military in Japan. I had met military that were stationed or spent time in Korea. One of my friend's friend was a West Point graduate, and he was based in Korea, and I met him, and I really liked him a lot, and he told me, some of the stories about Korea. No, my is that a word? Yeah,
Familiarity.
familiarity. Yeah, see what happens when you give up alcohol? You slur your words. Yeah. Um, my familiarity with Korean culture was from
Mm,
living in Los Angeles, and
mm,
we have we probably have the largest Korean population outside of Korea. I'm sure of that.
mm,
But it was pretty formidable, even back in the 70s and especially into the 80s. I had eaten Korean
mm,
food. I had been to Koreatown.
mm,
I at my university too. When I had friends that were from Korea, and
mm,
one of my best friends was a Korean Japanese.
mm.
He was Japanese, ethnically Korean.
Right.
And
That's
so,
conflicting.
anyways, to make a long story short, no, I made 3 presentations. Two, I made one in Seoul, one in Busan, and one in I can't remember where. Everybody always asks me, was at a university, and I was there for like one night.
Right. Right.
I flew. Maybe this was about 4 or 5 years ago, four
Mm,
years ago, and I was invited to the day after Thanksgiving, and
mm,
I didn't want to go, and but they agreed. I waived the speaker's fee,
mm-hmm.
and I think they bumped my air ticket up a class
All right.
to business class, and then from there I paid my way. After the one day in
Mm,
the snow of Korea, I flew to Thailand.
okay.
Not business class. The back
S-
of the plane. I
Snow in
flew to
Korea, that's
Thailand.
interesting. We don't get any snow here in the sun.
Oh,
We
oh
just on the
man, yeah.
outskirts of the city, but like inside the city itself, it's very, very,
Uh-huh.
very rarely that we get any snowfall. We just got some yesterday, and it doesn't touch the ground. It just melts midway through.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it snowed when I got there, and it snowed the next day, the day of the conference.
Mm,
But my memories of Korea, the times I went to Korea, especially, it just doesn't seem that long ago, but it
mm,
really is so long ago. It probably was, oh gosh, Could have been easily 20 years,
Mm,
18, 19 years the first time I went to Seoul.
right.
And I was amazed then. I loved it. First thing is I just was enthralled with Seoul. Loved the food, loved the people, loved it. Um, and I was impressed at how technologically advanced they were, especially compared to the U.S., where it was so difficult to get online. I can't even tell you how hard it was. It's not until, I don't know, the last handful of years, last 5, 6 years, that it's been easy globally,
Right.
to get online literally everywhere except, Cuba and North Korea. But everywhere else, it's no problem. But then it was, everywhere. The internet was like everywhere. The hotel was just like blazing fast speeds, and I could do my work. And then I
Right.
flew to Thailand, and I was on a dial-up, and just like, you know, they used to call it WWW used to be called the World Wide Wait, because it was so slow. That's what it was nicknamed. So that's my experience with Korea, and then being back here for so many years.
Mm,
Um, you can't help, now I've been back to the US. My son's going to turn 30
mm,
this year, so it means I've been back in the US for 29 years. And the Korean population is just mushroomed. It's huge,
yeah.
huge amount. And so, there's a Korean market near my house that I go
Mm,
to all the time, and a Korean food court. And my wife's best friend is from Korea, and it's really impossible to live in Korea, to live in Los Angeles without being I don't want to say influence,
mm.
but being having Korean culture. Just I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking well
Not
tonight.
not not coming in contact with it.
Let me not cutting into contact with vocabulary. Um, let's go back to influence. To live in Los Angeles without being influenced by Korean culture, and
Right.
whether it's food or seeing Korean writing,
Mm,
or markets, or certainly now with K-pop in Koreatown. Now there's so many non-Koreans that,
hmm.
well, not now because of COVID, but previously, and hopefully later in the year, next year, Koreatown has become the night place to go. I
Is that
mean,
right?
there are guides like all night in Koreatown where
Mm,
you start here, you have go to this bar, then you go to this restaurant, and you go to this spa, and
it's
then
interesting.
you literally, there's guides to spending the whole night in Koreatown.
Mm,
Um, and so, anyways, so yeah, so it feels, even though I've never taught or lived in Korea,
mm,
the culture itself feels
yeah.
part of me.
Um, some of the comments that were posted were actually about, well, Korea particularly, but specifically about the forums. And so I guess in the 2000s, I personally, I've used your website for job searches. I haven't really dabbled so much
Mhm.
in the forums. Never, I don't know
Yeah.
why. Just never was really interested in hearing what people have to say. I was just looking for the jobs and go straight there. But some of the people did, and they were saying that the Korean forums, in particular, as compared to all
Hmm.
the other ones, that they
Hmm.
were actually there's a comment, if you don't mind, I'm going to read because
Hmm. That's okay.
okay. I remember that the Korean job boards were certainly useful, and the
Hmm.
forums for teachers in other countries seemed pretty normal. But the
Hmm.
maniacal egotism that reigned in the Korean discussion forums remains unparalleled to anything I've ever seen on any other such forum. Not even
Hmm.
Oink or the likes comes close to it these
Hmm.
days.
Hmm.
Sometimes still wonder
Interesting.
what was driving that. So I don't know what the conversations were and what was talked about, but I guess it was a pretty vibrant and I don't know, outspoken place, the Korean Forum.
Yeah, yeah, especially in the beginning. Now,
Mm,
I'll pause that and I'll get to that in a
mm,
second. The forums have been kind of on hiatus, on pause.
mm,
It started where the software that I was using kind of started breaking down, and it was difficult to update in order, and we were struggling to update and move. You have to remember there are hundreds of thousands of postings. I don't
Mm.
even know how many.
Right.
There's just, and so moving them or even updating the software, we had tried once and it was just a disaster. It was a
Mm.
mess when we tested it. So, oh boy, what am I going to do? So I, it got to the point where I couldn't take any more registrations. And then it got to the point where I had to just archive them and put it on pause until I could figure out what to do.
Mm.
Now, in the meantime, as you probably know, or many of your viewers know, the website was completely redesigned.
Mm-hmm.
So while this was going on with the forums and I was trying to figure out what to do, my whole focus was on a whole website redesign, which was very, very, very badly needed, both
Mm.
from the user standpoint and especially from my end, running the back end.
Right.
Now, going back to your question, yeah, I think in the very beginning, Korea really was where was kind of like the center of ESL,
Mm.
EFL, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that was where all the jobs were. So my job board was predominantly Korean
Right.
jobs, teaching positions. So yeah, so it got to be, now mind you, I didn't participate in any of this. I had moderators and I
Mm-hmm.
rarely even went into the forums to read. It
Sure.
was just something that I had set up. But I do know that there were many times when, my moderators were just struggling to to handle, some of the conversations and the fights, or I guess you would call them, I don't know what you'd call it, but they were just, yeah, sometimes they would get a little bit heated,
Sure.
and people were egged on, and so. Anyways, I do remember on one of my conferences when I went to Seoul, we actually had, it was really fun because through the forums, someone had created a Dave's ESL get together at a
Mm-hmm.
bar in Seoul, and it was during my conference. And so,
That's interesting.
so
One of the commenters
yeah,
actually, I think he attended that because he mentioned that you showed up and he mentioned that meeting.
uh-huh. Yeah, it was great. I mean, that's, when the forums were, it was a very different era. I
Mm.
mean, it's different now. I mean, the reality is, you've got Reddit, which is just, I mean, there are different ways now, to be able to communicate or to be able to, I mean, in some ways, these, even though I plan to get my forums up and running again this year in some form or another, um, the reality is that it's very different now because of social media,
Mm-hmm.
and things like Reddit, which
Yeah.
can very easily create just these really fantastic, incredibly vibrant communities.
Mm.
Uh, but back then you didn't have that.
Right.
You didn't have Facebook. There was a lot that, so at that time it was incredibly relevant. It was very vibrant. It was exciting. I had a great time. meeting meeting people. That's when I really felt like, well, that's where you go almost famous. But it was just, there's nothing better than being famous in a bar. Well, I tell you, more people bought me drinks that night, so it's amazing I can remember.
Yeah.
But no, it was a lot of fun. So the forums had always been really a struggle to
Mm.
manage. Um,
I guess mainly
it,
due to their bulk.
yeah, even now it's just, I know it's something that's needed on my website.
Mm.
Part of me is like, it is, they are definitely a headache to manage,
Mm.
because anonymous people can be, uh, very nasty, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of,
Yeah, that's one of the things
it
about
can,
internet, right? It takes away the presence of
yeah,
like um, there's no need
yeah,
for decency, I guess, if nobody knows who you are, and people tend to be just very
that's
um,
right. Yeah,
spontaneously
yeah.
aggressive, you know?
Yeah, or purposely,
Yeah, yeah.
just to try to. It's my dog. Purposely, just to try to get a rise out of out of
Right.
people. I mean, you see it all the time if you
Yeah,
look
yeah,
on YouTube
absolutely.
comments.
Mm.
You go through the comments on YouTube, and there's people that will say the
Yeah,
most outrageous things because they can,
because they can,
and
exactly. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, and so yeah, so there was a lot of that was going on, and a lot of lawsuits that were being threatened as well. And so if there were some not just teachers oh, of course I could write a bad review of a school. A lot of times I didn't mind that or a bad experience, but sometimes it really crossed the line.
Mm.
um, and especially if people were accused of doing something where there was no proof, or there were a lot of problems, and there was more than a few times when I would open my front door and I'd be handed a subpoena,
Really?
and I'd have to call. It's not that easy to, I mean, luckily, as Donald Trump has found out, the law tends to be, our side. It's just, I mean, it's not that easy to be able to, with the First Amendment and
Mm.
some of the laws, to be able to sue somebody. Um, but uh, but uh, but cons- but it was a gray area, and it got to be. I never had to go to court, but with the subpoenas, it would, I'd have to talk to an attorney and sweet talk my way into smoothing everything out and removing postings, and it was very stressful. It was very scary. I don't like lawyers.
Sure.
Hopefully, none of your viewers are lawyers out
Not as
there.
far as
Hopefully,
I
they're just
know.
teachers.
No.
But good. But there's nothing worse than
Well, it's just the
than
process
being
of having to
threatened.
go through lawyers, and I think it's just a hassle.
Hmm.
Not to mention the fees involved. You know,
Yeah,
nobody wants to
no,
have to
that's
deal with
right.
that.
And there were some very large schools, very large
Mm.
organizations that
Mm.
and it was scary because I'm just one guy
Right.
running things out of my bedroom,
Mm.
um, and so but I kept at it. I mean, I was recommended, like, if a school wanted a post removed,
Hmm.
um, most of the time I would comply because it could always get put back on. I
Sure.
mean, it's not like I monitored every post, but it was a difficult balance of giving teachers, of course, the forum to be able to
Mm.
complain or review. But sometimes there were two sides, and sometimes not only was it done maliciously, but sometimes we would have competitors
Right.
that would write something bad,
Right.
about a particular school, and um, so it was hard for my moderators, and hard for me, and so it was kind of a relief to put it on pause. So I have not decided yet what to do
Mm.
with my forums. They're archived. There's a lot of information there, and they can still be read,
Mm.
but I have to make some changes. I have to, probably, what I'll do is keep the archive because that's there's information that will always be relevant,
Hmm.
and then start up with new software,
Hmm.
probably on a whole new server, start a whole new community,
Right.
and whether it will be successful or not, I don't know. It's been a long time. I not there's As I said, there's other forums, and there's Reddit now. So
Hmm.
whether my forums will take off again,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. But nevertheless, the archives are still there. And when you think that there's probably 17, 18 years of postings, uh, that are still very relevant,
Right.
about the culture and about lots of things, even the lifestyle in a particular city, in a place.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so it was a verbose,
Yeah. That kind of
long-winded
answers the question
answer.
of what you're planning to do to reinvigorate the forums. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, good question. How do we reinvigorate them?
Mm.
I don't know. If people want to email me, send me a message on how to do it. Yeah, I mean, I it's been on my list. Actually, I have on my phone a to-do list.
Mm.
It's funny. Here's my phone here. I'm going to read you my to-do list.
All
It's a
right.
wonderful
Let's
to-do
hear
list here.
Dave's to-do
Yeah,
list.
very good thing here. Dog food, top of my to-do list. Actually, I take that one out. Uh, clean, clean and organize my closet. Review my credit card bills because they're so high. I got to see where all my money is going because it's definitely not going into my savings account. Organize watches. I'm a watch collector.
That's
And
interesting.
I
I
don't
love
mean,
watches. I
yeah,
collect watches
okay.
too, but not
Yeah.
extensively.
Well, I don't anymore. I had to stop
Mm,
it. Any collector, it doesn't matter what you could collect. It can become it can become an addiction. And for me, it
mm,
was definitely an addiction. And I started focusing at one point on exclusively Seiko
mm-hmm,
watches, going back mostly from 1960s and
mm,
oh, but I started getting into all kinds of different watches, diving watches. Uh, I don't know, just not necessarily expensive watches. Some of
right.
them were just hard to find, and
Mm,
just my way of just a treasure hunt to be able to
mm,
find particular watches from a different time period or a movie or something like that that had
right, right.
relevance. And so through the years, I probably have accumulated a couple hundred watches, or something like that. I mean, and so I need to, on my list is to organize them, because I've got like watches, they're scattered. I wonder if I could reverse this. You can see here. Can you see these watches just on this table?
Yes.
You see that? Yeah. I'll turn that over there. So I have watches all over the place.
Mm,
I tend to be it's funny because I'm Buddhist and essentially I don't even believe in time.
mm,
I believe, it's just really just one big now. But but I am fascinated with watches,
mm,
and it's been kind of a childhood thing from the first time my dad brought home a watch for me on one of his trips abroad. And so I'm always playing around, sometimes finding broken watches at thrift stores and fixing them up, and it's a hobby.
it's
And
a
so
good.
that's on my to-do list. And getting off, God, I really ramble. If I ramble too much, say,
No,
Dave,
it's fine.
get on point. I'm a rambler.
I'm
That's what happens
totally.
when you're stuck indoors, COVID, only talking to three dogs and three cats. It's like,
Well,
oh,
I'm
a
totally interested.
human,
Like,
human, a
you've led an
human.
interesting life. Like, you've created something that helped a lot of people, and it's a really well known place for people like myself. So I'm really, this
Good.
is good. It's interesting.
So on my to-do list,
Hmm.
you can't really see it, is
No, there's a
forum research. It's research for forums,
right.
software and all that jazz. So it's
Nice.
been on
There
my
you
to-do list for like weeks and weeks. It's at the bottom of my to-do list that hasn't left there for months. I'm always
go.
finding an excuse not to dive into it, but I will only procrastinate for so long. So it's we'll see what happens in February.
Right. Can I just ask something? The
Sure.
camera, can you like move it up, down? Because right now I've got your name, Dave Sperling, sitting right on your forehead.
No, that's all right. That's a tattoo actually. So let's see. So you want me to move
If you
back or
could like
forward?
slide down somewhere, so maybe shift the
Like
camera.
back
Oh
or
yeah, that'll
or
work.
forward? Is that good?
That'll work.
We do like right? How's that?
Much better. Perfect. Okay, good.
That's good. It covers up the wrinkles on, I don't have to
No, man, you look good.
you won't have
60?
to Photoshop.
You're
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be
you're
60
looking
in
well.
March.
You're looking well.
Yeah, I try that. I sleep in formaldehyde at night, keep
Hmm.
myself well preserved and no, no. I no, I every so often I try to get my health back. I drift off every once in a while, but
Hmm.
I at times I'm an exercise buff. I've done marathons, and now I've gone vegetarian for the past 3 months and stopped drinking and
Hmm.
um, all that stuff. So yeah, as you start to get older, you realize that this body's got to make it through this
To the
the
next.
winter of the
Yeah.
rest of my life. So yeah.
Yeah. I stopped drinking about 3 or 4 years ago. I had my own kind of things that were going through my head and kind of led me to that decision of just cold turkey stop.
Hmm.
But one of my
Hmm.
students is in his 60s, about, I guess he's 64, turning 64. and he's a heavy drinker. He really
Right.
enjoys his liquor. I keep telling him,
Yeah.
you gotta slow down a little bit, cut down, because when he drinks,
Yeah.
he goes all out and he laughs at it and he
Mm-hmm.
knows,
Mm-hmm.
but he likes drinking. And I keep telling him, it's fine, but
No, I
you have to
know.
slow down a little bit, man.
You you do. Yeah. I don't, I'm not judgmental like people that drink, and I never was a heavy drinker,
Mm,
but I was a consistent drinker and I really did love it. I went to wine school. I spent a couple of years just for fun,
mm,
doing what they call the Wine Spirit Educational Trust, WSET. It's a British-based organization where I started. I first took just a class on wine tasting, which was fun with my wife, and then I took another one when I was in Paris, and then I go, wow, I really like this. So I took a beginning WSET course and passed, and then I took the intermediate, and I took the advanced, and I loved it. I loved just I part of it was just the academic in me that loved studying it. The drinking part was even better.
mm,
Taking but it was hard. It was difficult work, and it was actually a lot of work.
mm.
And then I got into whiskeys, and so I liked it too much. I mean, it was just one of those things where I never got drunk, but I just
Yeah.
really loved it.
Mm,
And I thought, and it was hard. I was developing a dependency where, I was like, yeah, the best part of my day is going to be the shot of whiskey that I'm going to have at the end of it. And
mm.
I just decided that, I didn't really want that anymore. I
Right.
just wanted, I and so yeah, so I just said, yeah, I'm done. And same with the meat. I look, I love meat, and I'm not judgmental. My whole family eats meat,
Mm,
but it was just one of those things where it was just I've always not just health wise, but I've always I'd be driving to San Francisco. I drive. I told you I have a small apartment there, and I take
uh-huh.
the Highway 5, which is just this long. It's a 6 hour middle of nowhere, kind of deserty, not deserty, but just rural,
Mm.
nothing kind of drive. And you pass by sheep, and oh, that's so cute. Look at the lamb. You pass by these little calves, and the cows and the calves. You go, oh, so cute. And you get to San Francisco and go, wow, a steak and a and a Cabernet Sauvignon wine would be wonderful tonight. And I always knew it was like hypocritical because every time I passed that little cow,
Mm.
I was always like, yeah, I'm gonna give up meat one of these days. And
See,
so that was the motivation behind that. Not so much for health, but it was just
I
one of those
admire
things
that.
where,
Like, that's one thing I don't
yeah,
think I'd be able to give up. Meat. It would be very hard for me. It would take a lot of
it's
motivation.
it's not easy.
Mm.
Well, that's interesting. Well, it's the same like alcohol. I mean,
Yeah.
I have no cravings at all anymore. So,
No, I think
I
you
mean,
have to have like good psychological, personal
yeah,
reasons in order to quit whatever it is, whatever
yeah,
minuscule
yeah.
addiction you may have or whatever. Not
I
even
don't
not even
have,
addiction, just like a
yeah.
habitual thing that you
Hmm.
do.
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, I've been able to. I just can't stop nose picking, but but that's okay. That's in the privacy of my room. So,
Now it's all over the place.
nah, that's another conversation.
That's
Um,
funny.
no, but yeah, I'm actually kind of amazed that I don't crave meat
Mm,
at all.
mm,
Even fish. Fish was like something that I thought, okay, I'm going to be a pescatarian.
mm,
I'll stop for a little while and then go back to. But I don't even crave fish anymore, and I've managed the vitamin supplements so that I'm
mm.
not, I'm getting extra iron and B12 and all that jazz, so I'm not like malnourished or anything like that. And I don't know, I feel great,
Mm.
So it was just like, wow, it's just no big deal. I don't miss it, and I've had like what 59 years. I can't tell you how much, yeah, Korean barbecue I've eaten
Yeah.
over the years, or
Right.
how many height beers I've had over the years. I've had enough whiskey and enough beer and enough wine, enough fish, enough fantastic sushi, and enough beef
Yeah.
to last me several lifetimes. So
Right. Okay, I have got
yeah,
one more question about the website, I think, and then maybe
sure,
we'll move on to like concluding remarks or whatnot.
all right.
When would be like the would you say that your website is at its peak with, most, I don't know, job posts, most engagement in terms of user comments or the forums and stuff? When was the year, I guess?
Well, it's a good question. Well, the forums, they've been stagnant for a while. It's just part of that has been just more the infrastructure, not having the infrastructure to kind of support what was needed.
Right.
And I guess me not having the motivation or the time or the energy to but it's just the thing is that COVID has just changed everything. So,
Sure.
like I have people that email me and say, Dave, where are the jobs? What happened to your job boards? And it's like, where are you living, on Mars? Because I can't even go to these places. You know
Right.
what I mean? The whole world is shut down. I'm not even supposed to travel like to San Francisco. In California, if I travel to San Francisco to, which I'm going to do in a week or two, I'm supposed to quarantine myself in my apartment because it's more than 160 miles from my base.
Right.
And so, it's just right now, COVID has really changed everything. And I was just shell shocked when it hit a year ago. And this is something that is going to affect us this year and probably somewhat into next year as well. And so, all you have to do really is just go back to like December of 1999. And yeah, there were lots of jobs. I was posting over 1,000 jobs a month on all my job boards. I'm probably posting half that now, 400, 500. That's actually pretty darn good. I'm actually really impressed.
Yeah, I just had a look,
like,
and
wow.
There were about 200 something jobs in Korea and about 100 and
yeah, there's 2 other job boards.
The international job boards. Because right
yeah,
now you only have
I can
3, right? There's Korea, China, and international, which is, I guess, I assume just
there's always
lumped up.
There's always been 3.
Yeah.
And I'm looking right now, and I have 445. Well, if I included some premium ads, I have 450 job ads. But on a good, I think the most I've ever had in a month has been like 1,100, and that was during a real, it goes in waves, not just like, the website's peaked. My website goes with the wave of where the jobs are. The economy, there's suddenly an Asian stock market crash. It goes too with what goes on in the world economically.
Sure.
And so, there are times when, I have 1,100 jobs, and then things change and it may go down, to 6 or 7 or 800, or the time of the year. Maybe it's the time of the year when, people are on vacation. It's Chinese New Year, or what's happening in Japan or Korea, South Korea. And so, pre-COVID, I definitely, in terms of the job ads, it was pretty consistent. There were times when, it's just, there's like 1,100 ads. And there were times when it was like 800 or 900, but it was not like I was counting like, I lost 200 or 300. There had been pretty consistent. And even now, I think with 450 ads, I'm, for the month, that's, to me, with COVID, it's crazy. It's like, wow. Especially when I see businesses around me here in LA and San Francisco that have just collapsed. I can't tell you how many businesses here in Los Angeles have collapsed because of COVID. So, I count my blessings. That I'm still in business and I'm still around. The forums, when did they peak? They would have peaked when I was running them,
Yeah.
when I actually, and
because
I have to say that
2000, 2001, they were pretty busy.
Oh, is that when they started? Yeah. Yes, certainly in terms of like South Korean stuff, and when they were there was kind of less competition, and it was pre-Facebook, and it was, a main way to communicate. But they still, they were pretty vibrant. Even I'd say, even 3 or 4 years ago. The
Hmm.
last couple of years, certainly the last 3 years, is just rather than blaming for the forums, rather than
Hmm.
blaming what's going on economically in the world or the world of ESL. It's been just really more me.
Right.
The problem is just been my fault for just really not just knowing that it was a lot of work, a lot of headaches. I had infrastructure that I didn't know what to do with,
Mm.
and so yeah. But it's always been in terms of the job ads, it's always been consistent.
Right.
And yeah,
Nice. Very good. We've been on for about an hour and a half. So I'm gonna ask you one more question.
sure.
Your future, I guess, future plans for the future. What are your plans? Gonna run the website?
Well,
Keep growing it? Or do you have
tomorrow.
other projects kind of on the go? Or
Yeah, well, the big thing that happened a year ago, it would have been, I guess, March of 2020,
Mhm.
was changing over to the new format, and
Mm.
that was just it's the back end that people don't see. Where I knew the website needed to be redesigned for a long time because I couldn't navigate the website myself. I would get onto the website and I'd have trouble. Now so many people access it with their phones, and it was not mobile friendly, and it was hard for me to find what I was looking for. So I knew that I needed to simplify to make it more manageable to navigate.
Mhm.
Aside from needing a facelift, but more importantly, it was the back end, and that was um, credit card processing, which I needed to have done automatically, and it was not being done automatically. It was
Yeah.
done through a terminal. It was a lot of work just to process credit cards for me. And then the job ads themselves, it was such primitive software that I had to copy and paste the actual ads into my like admin form, my little admin panel. So
Mhm.
I'd receive the ads and I'd have to copy the name of the school, the email address, the title, and I would do this manually, and it took me hours and hours each day,
Sure.
and I was it was a lot of work, and I didn't complain, but I knew that. Gosh, I was running the website like it was 1999. So I need, and it was just more just like the logistics of how to do that. So that was the big thing, to be able to automate so much of my work, where now with my cell phone, I
Mhm.
can run my website
Right.
probably 90% of the time completely with just my website. Like, I mean, with my cell phone. So right now, if job ads are coming into my website,
Mhm.
and sometimes I'm even like in line in my car waiting to pick up food or something like
Right.
that, I'll post job ads just with my website. I can't
With your
speak.
phone.
It's been a long day. I've been up since like 6 this morning. Um, I can process these ads through my cell phone. So, I
Mm.
pull up my
Mm.
bin, see it's already been paid for, or they're using credits, click a few buttons, and boom.
Mm.
Um, and so this was the big thing. So, okay. So this was years in the making. So now, number one, even though I'm making less money because of COVID, I have a lot more free time where something I told my brother, I motorcycle. That's another thing. I love motorcycling. So I motorcycle with my brother every couple of weeks. And
Mhm.
my brother, uh, I told my brother where before when we would get together to go motorcycling, it would be late morning because I had to get my work done and it took so many hours of work. My brother, who is a A-type personality, would let's go, hurry, hurry, hurry. I'm like, I can't. And we wouldn't start until like 10:30 or 11 because it would take me hours to get this work done.
Mm.
Now, what took me like 2 or 3 hours, I'm done in 20 minutes.
Right.
I'm finished in 20 minutes. And so it's given me, for the first time in many, many, many years, a lot more free time. And so so what are my plans right now? Well, the COVID break for me has been kind of nice,
Yeah.
as I'm sure it's been for a lot of people. You have to kind of look on the bright side. Um, of where, people perhaps could spend more time with their family, or you kind of have to look at some. Not it's been a
Yeah.
real tragedy. There's no doubt this has been one of the world's biggest catastrophe in
I think I was
so
just
long.
telling that to someone the other day. The first COVID shutdown that we went through here in Korea was from February, March, I think, 2 months. And yeah, while it was disastrous, and it hit us like a sledgehammer because we just had opened up our new school, invested a lot of money
Right.
into, interior and stuff. And we were open for literally maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then we had to shut down for
Wow.
2 months. And while
Wow.
that was disastrous, I think both my wife and I, like, we were going through the stress of having to deal with the finances, but at the same time,
Hmm.
we were at home with our kids on a regular basis, and it was just, waking up at any time we wanted and realizing that we didn't have to go into work and we could spend the day with our kids, which was great, you know.
That's
But
right.
second
That's
time
right.
around, which that happened 3 weeks ago, it was different. We went online and basically, work was minimized,
Hmm.
but we were still working, and I was teaching online, and it wasn't as um, relaxing or invigorating, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, as the first
Hmm.
one. So catastrophes, when they come, the first one, the good can be taken out of them. The second one, they're just not as, the planned ones
Hmm.
are kind of not so different
Hmm.
from the regular day. Which is
Yeah, yeah,
good and bad,
yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's in my case, it's given me more time to do some of the things that I've
hmm
wanted to do. Probably one of the biggest things is just reading, and I've always loved books. And I'm not a fast reader. I'm not a slow reader, but I'm not fast. But I have the time now where I can read one to two books a week
hmm
consistently. So I can, and that to me has been just one of the biggest boons over the past year since one is COVID, but more importantly was the redesign of my website to make things easier on my end, the back end.
Yeah.
But going back to your question, future plans.
hmm
Well, I don't plan on creating any more components on my website. Uh, the only thing that I do want is to have a community again,
hmm
and to resurrect my forums. So that would be the only plan that I have as far as the website goes. There's still a lot of really good stuff there. It kind of has everything right now that I want. It has there's student material there. So if you want like lesson plans,
hmm
grammar lessons, lesson plans for teachers, grammar. There's a lot on my website that a lot of people don't know about.
hmm
Um, but there's a ton of content on there, ideas for teaching ideas.
Yeah, I think that's one
Um,
of the things I used to take advantage of was the teaching ideas. There was a list. I haven't looked at it in a while, but
It's still there. Yeah, it's
yeah.
still there. It's just, yeah, I think it's titled
hmm
lesson plans now. It used to
Right,
be
right,
called the Idea Cookbook, which I
right.
probably should change the name back. But there's a lot of, I had a friend of mine, unfortunately, he passed away, Dennis Oliver. And Dennis was like a master ESL teacher. I mean, he was 16 years older than me, and just a really big influence. I met him at the Chicago TESOL conference in 1996, and
Mm.
we became very good friends. And he wrote a lot of material for my website.
hmm
We called them hints, but they're now, what do we call them now? I think we now don't even know my own website. I have to look because so much of it has been renamed
Sure.
from the redesign, and I haven't looked at it. But I maybe it's called grammar lessons or something like that. I have to actually look at my website to see
Mm.
what it was renamed. It used to be called the hints. It used to be called hint of the day. We used to put a new hint every day.
Mm.
But we've collected them, sorted them out, and archived them, and we put them on the new website. And there's also a way for teachers or students to be able to add to that, so they can add well, not that they can add ideas, lesson plans. there's still just a lot of great content that gives the site potential to grow, not just in terms of the job ads and the forums, but the material that's on there as well, which will never go out of date. I mean, phrasal
Sure.
verbs or people will always need to learn present progressives or phrasal verbs. It's just a nice, it's there, it's created, it's free. Um, so, but I guess, the thing that I have to start thinking about, I guess, is it's very strange because I started Dave's ESL Cafe when I started in 95. So I was 34 when I started. Well, my son's going to turn 30 this year. I
Yeah,
mean,
you mentioned.
yeah. So it's just like, it's like, okay, I was like just a little bit older than my son, starting this. So I had
Mm,
been doing this so much of my life. I was a young man, I was 34 when I started this.
mm,
And, and now I'm turning 60. And, so it's a different feeling. It's okay. Well, what do I want to do? What will
sure.
happen when I'm 70 or 75
Right.
or not around anymore? So I think part of it too is just at some point perhaps handing um, the baton over to somebody else in my family.
Hmm.
To be able to run things at
Right.
some point. But we're probably looking at a long way off for that. I'll probably be hands-on as long as I'm able to,
Mm,
mainly because the simplicity now of running the site, of it's not like hours and hours and hours of staring into a computer or
right.
getting what they call it, carpal tunnel syndrome.
Yeah.
Literally, which I had developed just doing the same hand movements over and over and over again over the years.
Right.
So now, I can just be at a stoplight, post
With
job
a
ads
couple of
and
clicks on your phone, yeah.
wait for the people behind me to honk, and then no time to. No, I don't do that.
What do you
I
ride?
don't do that.
What are you riding?
Oh, I have two motorcycles now. I have
Uh-huh.
a Triumph Tiger
Nice.
1200. It's an adventure bike. I've always been a big Triumph fan, and I've bought and sold different Triumphs.
Mm,
But the one I've kept is about 2 years old. It's a
mm.
big monster of a bike, and I love it. Love that
Yeah,
bike.
sure.
But that's the bike I take out with my brother
Right.
because it's comfortable and it's got all the bells and whistles. And that's the bike if I ever decide next year, which I'm hoping to do, or this year,
Mm,
I should say, I
mm,
want to do a cross country trip, and I'm
hmm.
planning on doing it on that bike.
Sounds
And then the other
fantastic.
bike is a bit of a, what do you call it? It's a bit of a cafe racer, which you wouldn't expect. It's a BMW R9T,
Mm,
R9 and the letter T, and it's a beautiful bike. The first motorcycle that well, ah, I don't want. I can ramble on about motorcycles for hours.
yeah,
I could probably
I get
talk
it.
much more
I
about
get it.
motorcycles than the ESL, but I, but I, let me preface it by saying I got in a bad motorcycle accident in Thailand in 1995, and
Mm,
I hit the pavement head first. And
ouch.
luckily, I was wearing a helmet, but I cracked some ribs and I broke the bone under my eye, and I
Mm,
was in the hospital. And if I didn't have my helmet on, I would have died.
mm,
So I had to give up motorcycling for many, many years because I had kids. And then when I had enough life insurance where I was worth more dead than alive, my wife gave me permission to buy a motorcycle again.
right.
And I saw, if you haven't seen this, Jack,
Mm,
there's a documentary. It's several parts. It's a TV documentary
mm.
called Long Way Round.
I think I
Um,
did. Is it with you and McGregor?
yes,
Yeah, I've
yes,
watched that.
yeah.
Yes, yes. I did see it with
Yeah,
my
and
friend.
subsequently they did long way down
Mm,
where they went down to Africa. They
mm-hmm,
did motorcycle to Africa, and they just have done long way up,
mm,
which is them on electric bike. It's just been put out, I think, by Disney. I
mm,
think Disney Plus. I think, but anyways, I saw this documentary. I watched it, and and it was like, oh man, these, I mean, essentially they motorcycled around the world
Yeah.
with just a cameraman. They
Yeah.
had a film crew, a support crew,
Yeah.
but there was just one crazy cameraman that didn't even have a motorcycle license. I had to
Right.
quickly pass his test. Who ended up sometimes out motorcycling them, even though he wasn't an experienced rider. But
Mm.
it was just absolutely fantastic documentary. Yeah. And that got me back into motorcycling. So my first bike was a BMW because they rode BMWs. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah.
That's what I gotta get.
So I had a boring looking BMW. Most of the BMWs are boring, but the R9T is it's a work of art. It's gorgeous.
Mm.
And I traded my bike in and got that bike. So I've kept two in my collection. And
Mm.
yeah. Do you
Nice.
ride, Jack?
I used to. I started
Okay.
basically when I first came to Korea and got my first bike here. I learned on a hand me down. I purchased from
Right.
an expat that was leaving. I was replacing him in the job force here, and I was it was like a 125 cc kind of a beater. And then a few months later, I
Mm-hmm.
upgraded to a more kind of sporty open body version.
Mm-hmm.
And then continuously, like I bought a Honda, then I got a Honda 900 cc, and that was my last bike. I had a slight accident
Mm-hmm.
with it, nothing too
Mm-hmm.
major, but it damaged the main kind of computer chip that was, running the whole fuel injection system on the bike. And that accident coincided with myself and my wife leaving Korea, which was basically the last time I was on a motorcycle. When we came back to Korea, we had kids, and now I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
banned from motorcycles. I guess maybe same, until my life insurance kicks in.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It was one of those things where I've been motorcycling now, back again,
mm,
11, 12 years.
yeah.
And I started riding when I was about 13 or 14 years old. So I've been
Mm,
riding most of my life. And my brother and I formed a great relationship with my brother. And so my brother and I, for a lot of years, we were not close. He's 7 years older than me, and he's one
mm,
of these construction macho kind of dudes.
mm.
And I'm kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a bookworm. I'm more of an Indiana Jones kind of bookworm,
Yeah,
where I I'm not exactly as I seem. I like to get off the beaten track, and I love adventure, and I
yeah.
tend to get myself in kind of risky, sometimes dangerous situations.
Mm,
But my brother and I would have breakfast with my dad every week, once a week. Just out of duty. My dad was getting old, and we every Thursday the three of us met for breakfast. And I came into breakfast once, and I told my dad and my brother, I said, "Oh, I just got a Triumph motorcycle." And my brother, who came of age in the 1960s, said, "A Triumph?" He goes, "You mean a vintage Triumph?" I go, "No, it's a new.
mm,
It's a retro looking modern
mm-hmm,
Triumph."
mm-hmm.
My brother said, "I got to see this." When I was a teenager, he goes, "I wanted a Triumph more than any other bike." I go,
Yeah.
"Really? Come on over." So he came over to my house. He saw the bike, fell in love. He goes, "Can I ride it?" And yeah, he's 7 years older than me. He's my big brother.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
But don't crush it. It's my baby.
don't crash it. No, I didn't even care. I was like, yeah. But I had my BMW, and so I
Mm,
said, yeah. I go, let's just ride around a few
mm.
miles. So he got in the Triumph, and I got in BMW. We rode around, came back. He said, "I'm buying a bike." And he did.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, he bought a bike. I had to go with him to pick it up because he didn't have his license. He had,
Right, right.
to get his license. And we have been motorcycling together for, I don't know, 11, 12 years.
Mm,
We have Bluetooth helmets,
mm.
so we communicate, we
Right.
speak, we joke with each other, we sing, we laugh, we
It's great.
tell each other stories, we reminisce about the old days growing up, talk to each other about our personal problems and our marriages and our kids, and share the scenery. Look at that! Wow! If you got the Bluetooth, you can say,
Mm,
"Wow, you want to go? Yeah, let's do a U-turn. Let's go up that dirt road. Let's see where that goes." It's great.
yeah,
So my brother is my motorcycle buddy,
that's important.
and
My buddy and I, we pretty
yeah,
much spent like the first 2 years in Korea just cruising around on these, older kind
wow,
of beat up bikes. But, two young guys, fresh to Korea, on motorcycles, and
Right,
we
right,
visited a lot of places, and it was fantastic. Like it's, traveling on motorcycles is one of a lifetime experience. It's kind of like you're in a machine, but you're not cooped up inside a car. You're still exposed to the
right,
elements, and
right.
it's a very different
That's
experience.
right.
And the
It's a
first time
very
I saw a
different,
Triumph
yeah,
here in Busan, same. I
yeah.
don't remember what model it was, but when I saw that bike, I was just I told my wife, this was before we got married, but I was like, man, that's the bike I want. Back then it was 10 grand, and it was way out of my price range. Such a nice
Yeah,
bike. So
yeah.
Triumphs, definitely.
They make beautiful bikes.
Yeah.
They're a company that managed to resurrect themselves. Probably, well, there's other British
Hmm.
British bike companies
Royal
that
Enfield,
have
maybe.
tried. Royal Enfield, yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't know if well, they never really quite went out of business because it was just like the Indian branch kept
Hmm.
churning them out
Right.
because it was a British colony,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like they just, I don't know who owns it now, but I think they just continuously just kept manufacturing them.
Hmm.
They make beautiful bikes, but not uh, no way in terms of the quality of Triumph's a whole different.
Hmm. Right.
The Royal Enfield just tends to be, wow, look at that. You look at, oh, that's a really cool.
Hmm.
Riding it itself,
It's a different experience.
Triumph, yeah, Triumph makes, they make retro looking bikes, they make
Hmm.
modern bikes, they make adventure bikes, they make
Yeah.
cruisers.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's probably my favorite motorcycle company.
Mm.
The company that has finally managed to resurrect itself, an American company called Indian,
Hmm.
and a company. Does Polaris still own them? Yeah, Polaris bought them. The Indian motorcycle, which was always like a competitor to Harley Davidson,
Hmm.
went out of business, and various people tried to resurrect it until finally a big, I believe, a snowmobile or company called, it's a huge company. They don't
Mm.
just do snowmobiles, but a company
Right.
called Polaris bought them, and really turned. They were making another motorcycle that they owned called Victory.
Hmm.
So Polaris started with Victory motorcycles, which were also just really fantastic bikes. It was the type of bike I really wanted to own, but never had the opportunity.
Right.
And then Polaris bought Indian, and then finally the Indians outsold the Victories, so they got rid of the Victories. They stopped that, and it's just been totally Indian motorcycles,
Mm.
and they're beautiful, 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 beautiful bikes with, like Triumph, this wonderful heritage, where you get on it and you just you've got that whole history and that whole heritage behind you. But I love all motorcycles, all two-wheeled. I love 50 cc, 49 cc scooters. I love 125. I've been all over, like you. I've been all over. I've been thousands and thousands of kilometers on a 125 cc bike exploring. Um, yeah, love it.
Yeah. I would love to get back on it. One day. One day.
Yeah, well, how old are your kids now?
Uh,
Oh, you each have one? I can't
no,
remember.
I've got two. My daughter's
That's what I thought.
10, 11 now, turning in August, I
Hmm.
guess, this year. And my son's just 2.5
Right.
years younger, so he's like 8 going on 9. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a hard thing. It's a hard decision. I mean, there's no doubt. Like, yeah, it's weird. I wouldn't want my kids to motorcycle.
Right.
I really wouldn't. Yeah. Um, I know how dangerous it is. I don't have the fear. I know I'm a
Mm.
good rider,
Mm.
but it's a matter of just being at the, well, you could still make a mistake. Yeah, look,
Sure. Sure.
yeah, we do make mistakes, so I can't be cocky and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a really good rider." I'm also getting old.
Yeah. But I
But
think
aside from all that, yeah,
the
that's part
daredevil
of. I
nature is
still,
gone when you get a little bit older. Younger people tend to
yeah,
be
I
a
don't.
lot more daring,
Right,
like
right.
invincibility is still present.
Right. I don't have that so much.
Yeah.
I don't feel invincible, but it's a matter of being cognizant of the fact that all it takes is being at the wrong place at the wrong time. You could be
Mm.
stopped at a signal, and somebody could be texting on their phone and they can go crashing into you,
Yeah.
or there could be a crash in an intersection where the cars may just all just kind of flow right into you. And there, but I personally don't think of any of that when I ride. I mean,
Mm.
it's not. I mean, I know it's there, but I love riding and I just enjoy it. But I always think, the lucky stars when I ride safely back into my driveway after a
Mm,
day of riding with my brother. We usually ride 200 or 300 miles, not kilometers. We put
right.
a minimum of a couple hundred miles, which I don't know how many kilometers that is, 300 plus kilometers,
Mm.
350 kilometers. But yeah, but it's a matter of, I don't know. Yeah, your wife has to be on board.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Your wife has to be on board because that's kind of what it took for me to get back into motorcycling again. And then in the meantime, I think also, Jack, as you get older, you also got to find stuff that you find challenging. Like I
Mm.
like to step out of my comfort zone. So, like a couple of years ago, I skydived for the first
Did you
time,
really?
and yeah, I did. It was like one of those things where my father was a paratrooper
Uh-huh.
during World War II, so my father would tell me stories about jumping out of airplanes, and
Mm.
I was always fascinated. But I won't deny that I had a fear.
Well, sure.
Uh,
Justifiably
yeah,
so,
it
right?
was justifiable. I was afraid of a few things. One of the things that scared me, aside from
Jumping out
jumping
of
out
a,
thousands of
right.
feet, was the fact that I have a condition where sometimes when it's like a sinus condition,
Uh-huh.
and if I descend too quickly,
Mhm.
I can get this incredible, how do you want to say, headache. It feels like my head's going to explode. It
Like a
feels like right between
pinch.
my eyes.
You know what? I've
No,
gotten
it's
that a
more the
couple
pinch.
of
It's yeah.
times, or something similar, maybe, yeah, on an airplane.
Yeah. It's especially one that hasn't been very depressurized very well
Uh-huh.
on a smaller plane that's gone down too quickly,
Hmm.
and it feels like my eyes are bleeding. My eyes tear up. In fact, the first time it happened, I had to wipe my eyes to see if there was blood on my hands. I really
Mm.
thought blood was coming out of my eyes. It's like right between your eyes. It feels
Mm.
like someone's taken a nail and just hammered it.
Right.
It's happened to me not very often flying. It happened to me once on a motorcycle descending very quickly
Mm.
down a highway called Angeles Crest Highway. And what I think one of my fears was this, jumping out of an airplane.
Mm. This might happen.
um, but I took sinus medicine and I cleared my sinuses and all that stuff. And I went, I think it was 18,000 feet. We had to go on with oxygen. But anyways, make a long story short, it was a blast. It was
Mm.
both the most frightening and the most exciting thing that I've ever done in my life. But I think that you have to find things that get you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I try to do that and not to be stagnant, to try to come up with things that I've never done before. And
Hmm.
it could be little things, like I can't travel because of COVID, and I live in Los Angeles. But today, I had to do some errands, and I just I found an old neighborhood, in the San
Mm.
Fernando Valley. I can usually find old neighborhoods. I love architecture,
Mm.
and you can tell by the trees. So here in LA, which is a relatively new city, if you have a lot of really large trees with a lot of growth, tall trees, it usually signifies like older neighborhoods. It means the trees have been, put in many years ago.
Right.
And I can kind of find these old neighborhoods. And usually I do it on motorcycle. But just today in my car, just alone, I just hit up neighborhoods near my house that I discovered and drove onto we have a VA, Veterans Administration Hospital. I'd never been onto I don't want to say campus, but onto the grounds. And
Hmm.
I drove onto the grounds to explore. But I think the idea really is to try to keep coming up with
Things to do.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, something. Keep your life.
Interesting, especially now since a lot of us are, like you say, cooped up, or just like for myself, I mentioned to you earlier, it's just work and home, work and home. So my thing to do on the weekends is
Right.
I try to get out and I try to hike mountains here. Like Korea is a very
Nice.
mountainous country. Like 60% of all the region is covered in mountains and hills. They're not very big.
Right.
The highest one goes up to I think 1955 meters, which is relatively
Hmm.
small when you compare it to other places,
Yeah.
in North
Right.
America. But
But still,
yeah, so I try to get up and and do that. I've managed to climb like three peaks in one day, which added up to about 240 meters. Sorry, I'm doing metrics,
that's
man.
a
I
lot.
don't do feet.
Well, that's all
Yeah,
right.
it was a killer. By the end of the day, I was dying. But by the time I was on the first peak, the second time around, after having climbed another peak before that, I could
Right,
feel the adrenaline because I didn't feel tired. My legs
right,
were numb by that time. There was no pain.
right,
I felt
right.
kind of the sense of joy and achievement. By the time I got, down off the mountain to
Yeah,
the car,
yeah,
man, the
yeah.
entire week after that, my legs were just, oh my God, the pain. It was painful,
I
but
I
there
get
is,
it.
you
I
know,
know it. I know it. But I
challenge.
like what you said, that it's the adrenaline of the achievement.
Mm,
And yeah, I get it. I get it. I mean, and it could be little things. Like I ran a marathon, which for
mm,
me for me it was a big thing because I'm not a long distance runner. I mean, I love running and I do long distance, but I'm not good at it. I don't have a body for it. I have all kinds of I'm like the Tin Man. I've got all these various parts that are, crumbling. I went to an orthopedist and he said, you should try another sport. but uh, but when I finished the marathon, I mean, it was just a sense of accomplishment.
sure.
Or it could be,
Well, it's a
I don't
marathon.
know,
I don't
just
know.
like we
I think
said,
it carries a lot of weight historically, but also it's not really a short distance. It's not something that most people can do. I mean, there are a lot of people who do marathon running, but it's not something that the
right.
average person can even, get into. Like, there's no way I could do
No,
marathon. Like, you have to do some type
you
of
got to sign up and you got to
preparation.
be built. But with
Yeah.
that said, I guess what I really needed to say was it that was kind of the peak moment.
Mm, mm,
But I had little moments of accomplishment before that. Like when I first started, I couldn't run a mile. So the
right.
first time I was actually able to run a mile, I felt a sense of accomplishment. And
Mm.
the next time I was able to, I don't know, I think I did a 5K, which is so I don't have to convert to miles for you. So I did it like I do to my American friends. Um, the first time I did a 5K, wow, that was a huge, and then a 10K, and then a half marathon, and
Mm.
each of those were achievements.
Yeah.
And even now, then I got in such bad shape again, and I had so many injuries that just for me now, like a few months ago, uh, to get some running shoes and to run for 20 minutes,
Mm.
that was a huge achievement for me. Even
Mm.
though I had done a marathon before, my circumstances had changed. And in the meantime, I had ruptured my Achilles tendon and had surgery to repair it. And
Mm.
I was in a cast. I couldn't walk for like months. I was
Yeah,
in
I
a
can
cast
imagine.
and everything.
Right.
And then my motorcycle fell on me, and uh, I uh, tore my meniscus. So I had a knee injury, and that had
Wow.
to heal.
Yeah.
So I had all these injuries. Then I had a lumbar problem. So my vertebrae
Mm.
were pressing together my lumbar somewhere. You can see I've never gone to medical school, so so those two thingies there
Yeah, that's what I
that
call them too. I've
yeah
never been to
yeah
medical school either.
those two thingies that skeletons have on the back of their.
Right, right.
This is from Dr. Dave here. You can come to me with all your ailments. So I go to a orthopedist, and
Mm,
yeah, sure enough, yeah. So for me, now I've built up where I can run for nearly an hour or 45 minutes or so, and so yeah, it's each of those accomplishments. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's getting through a certain amount of books or finishing a particular book, or
mm,
my kids are musicians and my daughter's an artist. For them to complete a project, a painting, a recording. It doesn't matter what, it
yeah,
doesn't matter if you take up a guitar and you can just play the simplest of chords, it's
mm,
accomplishment. But you always have it. I think the idea, as I'm approaching my 60s now, is it's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong. There's always things that you can learn, that you can't just go stagnant because you're at a particular age, or maybe I'll never do a marathon again, but certainly I could do a 10K, and it's
sure.
just fun.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's important to, not to sit on
I
your behind and do nothing. It's just, I think mentally
Yeah,
humans are not built to be stagnant, to stagnate. If we
that's
do
right.
for too long, our brains will come up with things to do. So it kind of goes against this
Yeah.
idea of, you know, um, people who are given free things will not do anything in order to work for them. It's not true. Like everybody will find things that interest them personally and will pursue those interests to kind of, just because we can't just sit still and do nothing. you know, that's
Yeah,
not
and
how
it's
we're
interesting
designed.
you bring that up because actually one of the things I've been working on is exactly that, sitting still and doing nothing. And I got into meditation,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 years ago. And in the meantime, I've done retreats, Zen retreats with my daughter up in the
Mm-hmm.
Bay Area, um, and studied also kind of like not just Zen, various Buddhist types of meditation, but yoga and different breathing techniques from India.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's also been part of my life. Part of it too is one of the things I have learned about, I've been learning to do is keeping still, because
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side of all that, not so much like not going hiking or running a marathon or
Yeah.
doing reading a book, but having to be consumed all the time, with especially with this, with
Mm.
technology, where we're just always, you know,
Always on the phone, right? Doing
yeah,
this
it's
and doing
like,
that.
I'm in the line at the bank and okay, let's see, let's check, okay, let's check this,
Right.
and it's not healthy. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I have been doing is just learning to be still, where
Mm.
not saying that it's not good to make a to-do list or have things that you want to do, whether it's like studying another language or an instrument, or going hiking up a mountain with my daughter, this weekend on Sunday. But the idea of just being comfortable, just sitting very quietly and just very still,
Mm.
and that's I. It's been something that I've been trying to focus on. I guess you can call it kind of. There's just times I think that we need to kind of get back to where we were. Technology and the internet is wonderful, but there's times when you just really just need to turn it off. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to.
Unplug.
You have to. You have to. Yeah, I mean, it's just yeah. Yeah. I take 3 dogs out for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not bring my phone with me. I just don't. I just want to focus. I can watch the dogs and keep an eye on them, um, and just trying to wean myself off of checking messages and checking email and being at the stoplight
Yeah.
and posting job ads. So the idea is the flip side of all this,
Mm.
where it's just being comfortable. Without the technology, without necessarily books or Netflix or anything, just having a certain time of just being still, just
Mm.
being focused on. But with that said, I love Netflix. You say, what are your plans? Well, my plans are after I get off here, I'm gonna watch some Netflix. I stream a lot. I stream stuff every day.
Yeah.
So I do about 2 hours of reading a day,
Mm-hmm.
2.5 hours of reading of books, and then I do about 2 hours of streaming movies or TV shows at
Sounds
night.
good. Everything in moderation. I always say everything in moderation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard sometimes because there's times, especially I'd say less so with reading. Reading was something I had to uh, get into a habit.
Mm.
In the beginning, it used to tire me out. After 15 minutes, it was like,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's a training. It's you gotta train yourself to not fall asleep
yeah,
and like not let your
exactly.
brain, wander away into other areas. Absolutely.
That's right. In the beginning, it was just like I didn't have the attention span. I mean, how could
Yeah.
it be? How could it be that I could watch net? I could. I could go through like Breaking Bad,
Hmm.
and I could watch like 5 hours, episode after episode after episode,
Yeah.
and never feel tired.
Right.
And then I could be reading a book, and after 20 minutes, I'm thinking, yeah, I either want to like do a quick shut eye,
Yeah.
my eyes are getting tired. So it really took me time to be able to. Now I read pretty much at about 45 minutes to an hour at a time, and
Hmm.
that's usually my time, unless I only have a half hour,
Right. Right.
or 20 minutes. Um, but yeah, I mean, everything is in moderation, but there's some days when, I would like to just, just watch like 6 hours of television. There's some days I would like that, but I can't.
Sure.
Um,
You're
yeah.
busy. You got stuff to do.
No, that's part of it. And part of it is just, I don't feel it's healthy.
Hmm.
Again, it's a matter of balance.
Absolutely.
And I've tried so hard to get balance into my life, in as many aspects as, it's hard to be completely balanced,
Hmm.
but I've gone so far off the deep end where I'm unbalanced, whether it's like collecting watches or, working on particular projects. Oh, there's just lots of things. Motorcycles, learning something new, where I've just gone to such extreme, um, that it's become unhealthy, where I've had to really learn how to balance all
Hmm.
the different aspects of my life, so I'm able to give full attention to whether it's my kids that want to talk to me, um, or time with my dogs. In fact, I'm going to show you one of my dogs. Come here,
Oh.
Milo. Ah, this is Mr. Milo.
Ah, was that
Oh,
a Shih Tzu?
Milo. Nah, he's a breed called a Miki,
Oh.
Miki,
Ah,
and he weighs
interesting.
9 pounds. Yeah, I saw one of these up in San Francisco,
He's about the same size as
and I
my.
needed.
What the heck do I have? A Maltese. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Miki is its own breed,
Mm.
a relatively newer breed.
Okay.
That kind of came about in the 1980s after, many many years of experimenting. But it's actually recognized
Mm.
a breed. And I saw one of these up in San Francisco, and I fell in love. I was
Mm.
just walking with my daughter, and I said, "Oh wow, what kind of dog is that?" And she told me her breeder was in Central California. So I went home and Googled Mickey. Um, and that night I sent a message to the breeder, and I go, "Oh yeah, do you have any puppies available?" And I got a message back, "Yeah." And maybe that night or the next day I sent a deposit for this little
Mm.
guy. My other dogs are all my other animals are rescues, and he's the
Mm.
only one that I've actually purchased.
Mm.
But I uh, I needed a dog like I needed a hole in my head. It was pre-COVID. I normally travel a lot,
Yeah.
and it was just like my wife's like, "What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? What are you doing? We've got already 3 cats and 2 dogs, and."
One more
But
dog.
now he's been the star of the family. Everybody loves him. He's been just the spoiled little baby of the house that
Yeah. Pets and animals
everybody
take
loves.
take a lot of care. We've got one dog, and it's
Yeah.
we got the dog for my daughter, and basically I'm the one taking care of it right now for the most part. I get home, honey, have you fed the dog?
Yeah.
No. Who's feeding him? You are, daddy. Okay.
Yeah. That's happened to it. It happens when they grow up too. So we have my daughter's cat, and we have my son's dog.
Hmm.
So the people that are in their 20s find out that it's hard to take. It's not so much hard to take care of, but when you're mobile, you go different places, and you go to concerts, or
Yeah, you gotta
you
be
go
home
away
for the
for days at a
pets. You gotta
time.
be there. Take them out and
Yeah,
feed them.
it's not an easy thing to do if you're not rooted. And so if I had to say what my my life tends to be, I work for him. What's your job? That's pretty much what I do. I get up in the morning, I feed them, I walk them. I what? Give me a kiss? Yeah, I mean, I just essentially spend so much of my time kind of
Mm,
with the animals. And there's cats, cleaning cat box, spending time with the
right.
cats, feeding the cats, all that jazz. So yeah, so that's another aspect of, what are you
Yeah,
going to do?
that's another conversation. The life of Dave,
No.
his private life. Well, we got a lot of
Yeah,
privacy stuff out
yeah,
of
but
you.
private stuff.
Yeah.
Well, aside from that, aside from dealing with a lot of family drama,
Mm.
which and as your kids get older, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems,
Yeah,
and
I'm
so
not sure. I'm looking forward to my daughter becoming a teenager and, all the teenage stuff involved with that.
yeah, there's all of that stuff that comes about. But aside from family drama and of course COVID, dealing with COVID and all of that stuff. No, my life tends to be just animals, motorcycling, books, movies.
Mm.
You know, exercising, running, meditation, music. That's a whole nother conversation because I'm a huge music fan. My kids are musical. My daughter plays harp and cello, and my son plays.
No, really? Harp. That's
My son plays
interesting.
piano, but everything's stringed. He's a
Mm.
guitarist, banjo player, all kinds of different instruments, everything.
Nice.
So my kids are. I'm not talented musically, but
Hmm.
I'm a huge fan of all types of music. From
Yeah.
classical jazz to everything that all new stuff that goes on now, global music and even some K-pop. Yeah, which I've gotten into. I just saw a documentary
Really?
on what are they called? Blackpink? No, is that
Yeah,
no?
yeah. There's a new band. I think they're
Is it?
they're they're pretty recent. Blackpink. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think they're a new
that's who they
sensation
are.
here going on. I
They are.
personally don't
Yeah,
follow
yeah.
K-pop at all, but yeah,
No, I
Blackpink
don't
is.
either. I don't either.
Mm.
I the only reason I well, my sister's daughter loves K-pop, so
Mm.
she's a big fan. But I never got. I don't really like that type of music. But Netflix, I believe Netflix, uh, had a documentary on Blackpink,
Mm.
but it was a very good documentary about the band, and I found them very interesting, and just the whole phenomenon
Mm.
on just I had no idea how this whole K-pop, how this whole thing was created. That there's
Right.
these schools of years and years of there's auditions and schools and all this training
Yeah. Apparently, it's
and
a
I also
hard
had
road to travel.
it's hard. I also had no idea that at least for Blackpink,
Mm.
like one of the girls is from Thailand. Two of them spend a lot of time abroad. One in, I believe, New Zealand,
Mm.
and I can't remember what the other one was. There's out of the four girls, there's only one that actually is just grew up in Korea. Born
Mm.
and raised in Korea. And so I found their backstories very, very interesting. Just about each of them,
Mm.
and their concerts. Well, where I was getting to, and I'm sorry, I'm just rambling on.
No,
Of
no, that's
course,
cool.
I hope you don't have to record all this. Just conversing, but you might have heard of one of the biggest music festivals in the world is one here in California called Coachella.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Coachella or
I
not.
haven't.
Uh, okay, Coachella is out in, guess where it's located? Coachella. Coachella Valley. It's over by Palm Springs.
Okay.
And it started off, oh gosh, how many years ago? I don't know. 20, 25 years ago. I'm
Mm.
not sure how many years ago, but it started off as just a really small scale indie
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, festival, out in the desert every
Mm.
spring. And it grew into this ginormous music festival. Um, uh, and it went from one weekend to two weekends, to two
Mm-hmm.
identical weekends of like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and started attracting just huge acts. Like oh, you name it, everybody's played there. Paul,
Right.
of course, like Paul McCartney and you name it. I mean, it started off really small, and now they've branched into all different types of music, from um, electronic dance music to of course there's been rap, um, different indie bands that have been resurrected, like
Mm.
bands that had not been together for 25, 30 years, that have agreed to give a concert at Coachella. It's
Hmm.
fantastic. All these different stages, all lit up at night in the middle of the desert. It's just beautiful. So I started going to Coachella. The first time I had to take my daughter because she was a teenager and couldn't go alone. And then I took her a couple of years, and then a couple of years ago, my best friend that I grew up with in high school, we went to Coachella together. We were these like two old guys, you know. He's well, I got it. I don't want to say anything too personal because he might see this podcast. So, but we were like these two old guys. You could say, how old were you?
Mm.
Well, let's put it this way. I wasn't drinking then. I didn't want to get dehydrated anyway. It was, you know, it was hot in the desert.
Right.
And my friend doesn't drink at all. Well, you want to know how old we are? We're so old that, you know, in order to get to the drink area, you have to I show your ID and get a hand stamp.
Hmm.
Well, the only reason we wanted to get a hand stamp to get into this drink area was because they had better bathrooms. So, because we had to pee so often. And in fact, when we went up, you know, a long line to show your ID, and we get up there, and the guy goes, "I don't need to see you guys' ID." He goes, "You're the oldest guys that have come by in the last hour." Okay. But with that said, you know, the two of us, we've been music fans. I've known my friend Jonathan since I was 15. We met in 1976, and you know, concerts from, you know, whether it's Pink Floyd or the Rolling Stones
Hmm.
or John Mellencamp was John Cougar playing at a little club. Yeah, new wave bands, rock bands, all this stuff. We both of us were, you know, huge, you know, punk, new wave,
Hmm.
jazz, you name it. And so it's nice all these years later, as we were approaching our 60th year, to go and hang out with all these like 20 something year olds and teens, just for the music.
Right.
You know, just for this absolutely, you know, fantastic music that you can just wander over and discover. And who's this? Oh, wow, this is a great group. And you write their name down, watch a bit of their concert, go to another tent, watch what's going on. Maybe you like it, and suddenly you know, it's just a fantastic experience. And so, unfortunately, because of COVID, this is the second year in a row where Coachella has been canceled. So I just
Right.
got an alert on my phone. So next year, if and when I go to Coachella, I will be 61 years old, which might be pretty good because by that time I might even be able to get like one of those handicapped senior passes to get a really good parking space. You know.
Nah, I don't know. It seems like the 60, man. I think maybe time is moving faster, seemingly, and we're expanding our lifespans.
Well, it's really funny because you know, yeah. So I was 59 and COVID hit,
hmm.
and you know, we had like in Korea, I'm sure, to get into places like grocery stores and stuff. There were like long lines. Not so much now, but especially when in the beginning of COVID.
Hmm.
And then they had a sign up that said, you know, we have like well, they had a senior priority line where you could just like walk in,
Hmm.
and it said from 60 years onward.
Hmm.
So I go up, I go, I'm 59. I'll be 60 next year. He said, sorry.
You're too young. See,
I'm
there you
like, please.
go.
And this, oh, are you there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty soon I'm going to lose my AirPod charge. But yeah, it's pretty funny. So you know, it's the same thing with the COVID vaccination. Here in the U.S., they've now, or at least in California, they've opened it up for people 65 and over. And
Hmm.
my brother is eligible. My brother is, he just turned 67. My brother's like, la, 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 la. I'm getting a COVID shot. And I go, that's not fair. He goes, this is the first time I feel like I'm too young. I'm missing out on everything. I can't get I can't get into the supermarket, Trader Joe's early. There's all these great senior discounts that I can't get
Soon
because I'm
enough. Don't
too
rush it. Don't
young,
rush
too
it.
young. Exactly. Nah, I joke about it. But it's pretty funny. I feel I met somebody yesterday that was turning 21, and I said, "Wow, congratulations!" I go, "That's the last good birthday you're gonna have." Goes downhill from there.
I thought
After
it
that, it's
starts
just like,
going downhill after 26 or so. 21 is
yeah,
still
well,
good. 26,
I guess
20.
so. But you see, here in the U.S.,
Oh.
you have to be 21 to drink
No, right,
alcohol.
yeah,
So
okay.
it's
But
a big pivotal birthday here in
I
the
found
U.S.
that like time just sped up after around 30, I think. Up until 30, life was kind of hunky dory. We did this and that and travel. But after 30,
That's
things
true.
just sped up, and the year just became a lot shorter. Things just
Yeah, you're
flew
right. You're
by.
right. Uh-huh. Yeah, part of it is because when you're in your 20s, your childhood is still pretty near. I
Hmm.
mean, you're not that distance away from it, from being like a teenager or from even remembering puberty. And when you get over 30, it starts to become quite distant.
Yeah.
But it does, yeah. Does it go by fast? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a cliche, and I don't mind it.
Mm.
I think turning 50 was a bit of a shock. Uh, yeah, and you go through a bit of in my 40s, I still looked really young.
Yeah.
I'd be in my 40s, and sometimes I would be asked for my ID for alcohol, which is pretty crazy here in California. But then 50 hit, and I think one of the things you think about is not from 30 to 40, it just goes by so fast. So you
Mm.
realize when you turn 50 how quick 60 will come.
Right.
And then it's like, oh my gosh, wow, yeah. It's hard to be like, I don't know. I mean, I'm youthful because of my immaturity. Because I've never left my adolescent. I still have this adolescent sense of humor.
Mm.
But when you're on the verge of, I think these pivotal birthdays, like 50, where you're on the way to 60, um, and I know I'm gonna die. not
Uh,
not me personally,
maybe
not me. That was
your
I didn't mean
Bluetooth.
that. Actually, I'm looking at my
Your Bluetooth.
iPad. My iPad is going. It's giving me it's going. Dave, you're 60, and it goes.
It's
I
time to
just got this
go.
flash where both my AirPods and my iPod are about to die, and they go, Dave, this conversation is very relevant. You're 60. You're on the way to 70.
Yeah.
It's time to talk about death
Yes.
because
Well,
I'm
maybe
about to
endings.
lose power.
If
Endings. I
we
know I'm
don't,
losing power.
I don't want to lose you just randomly out of nowhere.
Yeah, my iPad and my
Yeah.
earphones are
All right,
dying.
Dave. Well, then, thanks a lot. Thanks a bunch again for joining and agreeing to do
Oh, it's
this
fun.
podcast. It was great talking to you. We've
You too,
rambled on for
Jack.
the longest. This is the longest podcast I've
Yeah,
ever
you got
done,
a lot of
man.
editing. You gotta have a lot of editing to do.
Thanks a
Yeah, I
lot.
tend to do that. Well, I don't look. I think part of it is I don't. I guess I just look at it as a conversation with somebody really nice. I like you're easy to talk to, and
Yeah,
I
thanks.
enjoy people. And
Likewise.
I think for
And I
me,
don't I don't think I'll be editing anything. I'll just leave it the way it
oh,
is.
all right, all right. Just
Yeah.
one comment. I really don't pick my nose. Just kidding. Just kidding.
We'll
Anybody out
keep
there
that.
watching this? No, it's itching. It's sometimes it itches and it looks like I'm picking, but I want everybody to know I'm not a nose picker. I'll end it at that.
All right. Thank you,
I
Dave.
told you
Thanks a
I'm
lot.
immature. All
No
right.
worries about it.
Take care, Jack.
Thanks. Take
Be
care.
well. Stay safe.
Will do. Bye bye.
Bye.
That was Dave Sperling, the founder of Dave's ESL. Fantastic talk. It was really good talking to Dave. That was really good. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you have any questions about David, message him or message me. Leave a comment in the section below. And yeah, a bunch of questions were answered. Hopefully, all of them. If you enjoyed the podcast, then make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.